Radio, live 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, celebrating 10 years of iconic sporting moments at the Aviva Stadium.
Yeah, very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Sheahan with you every morning from 7:30 until 10. If you want to get involved, you can WhatsApp us on 0879 180 180, or you can use the hashtag OTBAM on Twitter, or indeed you'll get us on Instagram as well if that is your buzz. Owen, good morning to you. How you doing?
Very well. How are you doing?
I'm good.
The aftermath of Mount Rushmore, how's it treating you?
Well, I was accused of bringing about the fall of Irish civilization in one tweet, and somebody else got very angry about the fact that, you know, there was a woman on the Kildare Mount Rushmore. What a shocking turn of events. Imagine.
I was wondering if those two things were linked by the same individual online. What happened for people who don't follow you on Twitter?
Different people. One man's tiny brain couldn't compute the fact that a woman who had like 130 caps and 27 trophies and was the best player in the best team in England on two separate occasions over a 12-year period merited a place. Like, Kildare's best ever soccer player did not merit a place by virtue of the fact that she was a woman was one of the arguments. And then the other one was just like, I felt almost apropos of nothing, but in keeping with the Avatar and the other type of, you know, whatever the IR exit group, or whoever they are, this guy was one of those guys. And I was like, Liberal, I can't even remember it. It was like, essentially, Ireland is dead. It's with O'Leary in the grave. That was the sum total of it. I was like, well, we got out of this pretty well, I think, you know.
If any county is going to spell the death knell for Ireland anyway, it was always going to be Kildare, wasn't it? I
think there's probably some others that still have to come. I did see in the comments yesterday, it was like, so such and so gets in because of where they're from. It's like Aidan O'Brien. He's going to get in the Wexford one. And I was like, I'm just not going to reply to that one for now.
Yeah. That's a bit. I have noticed that there's a lot of powerhouses that have been done already. Like, I'm just waiting in the long grass and buying bags of popcorn now, getting ready for Dublin, and just seeing how this develops. Because if you think that you stepped into dangerous territory by making picks that people didn't like yesterday, imagine Dublin. Every person that's going to be left out will cause a huge amount of consternation, whether it's the football fans you've annoyed, whether it's the GAA fans you've annoyed, or whether it's going to be the rugby fans that you've annoyed, or potentially all three. Maybe you'll be able to annoy every single element of Dublin sporting fraternities. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
You are a brave man looking forward to anything other than getting out alive from your own county. A notorious cesspit of debate and rancour. The roughest type of effing animals, as Paddy O'Shea described Kerry fans, and you are going to wade into the middle of it, a young man, and you are going to come out of it bald and old. That's what's going to happen. You will age, literally, physically, metaphorically. You will age over the course. And the worst part about this is, Owen, you didn't intervene. You didn't lobby the Grand Poobah about when this was going to happen. It has just been announced that June 2nd, after the bank holiday, your entire bank holiday weekend is now screwed because you're going to be getting lobbied by the family members. Your family will be getting lobbied by the family members down in Kerry. They still live in Kerry. They're the ones I feel sorry for. It's like Brian Kerr, living in Ireland was actually the worst thing that happened to him as the Ireland manager, because everybody was stopping him on the street, telling him what to do. Your family are going to have the worst time of this. At least you, cloistered up above in Dublin, in quarantine. I mean, I still suspect that the more resourceful Kerry people are going to get to you because they know a way.
Yeah, I think my family will probably have to get up to Banna Beach and get smuggled on a ship around to Dublin, because the police down there won't let them leave by regular means over the border to Cork after all this is done. But two things. First of all, I don't live down there, so at least I'm going to be safe. But second of all, my Mount Rushmore is perfect, and nothing's going to go wrong, and nobody will actually disagree with me that much. So I'm being genuine when I say this. Mine will be the one that causes least controversy because it's correct.
Tyrone are June the 8th. How many from the team of the decade are going to make it? And Dublin are June 15th. Should we split them in two? Should we do Dublin City versus Dublin County? Should we do North and South? Should we take the geographical divisions, the Fingal, Dunleary, Dublin City, and maybe we should do that? Or maybe we should just have one massive mountain that towers over the rest of the country and gets all the funding. How does that sound?
North and South suits me, and North can include Fingal, South can include Dunleary. I think that's as good an option as any. I think Dublin City, Dublin County. I think the Liffey is a good defining metric by this. Like, is there a little bit of a grey area when it comes to Dublin City, Dublin County? Like, where does Dublin City end? Like, am I in Dublin City? Am I
within the canals? You know, proper inner city.
Oh, sorry, yes. That is a very defined way as well. That is also a body of water that can be a very definite line on a map. Now, I'm all for North and South, and I think we should do it actually. And I think this will just set the precedent for people waking up to the fact that the GEA team needs to split into two itself. So we can be the peacemakers and all of that. Get people used to the new normal.
Now is the time to make those big, broad, sweeping changes to how we do business. Dublin really is too big to be in the same championship as Longford. When you think about it, it's absolutely ludicrous. But we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Now that we've dropped that bomb, we can sit back, rest, and everybody can feverishly get involved in that conversation. 0879 180 180 is the number. Ugo Monye was the guest alongside Keith Wood on Monday Night Rugby last night. Ugo's got an amazing story. Knows Keith Wood from his playing time at Harlequins and was obviously part of the team during Bloodgate. So that's a major focus for this conversation, but loads of other stuff in it as well. Enjoy this. We'll see you soon.
Keith, teammates you too?
We were teammates. It is a long time ago. When you were starting your little intro there, I thought you were going to say 200 years ago. But it was, I was at the end of my career. I had a couple of really bad injuries at the very end. I hurt my neck. And then in trying to come back from the neck injury, my shoulder went again. And then all the old scar tissue from the different operations happened. So I was broken. I was a broken man at the end of 2002, start of 2003. And I went training with Paul Pook, who I think some of the rugby nerds out there will know was the fitness coach for Ireland when they won the Grand Slam in 2009. Cracking guy, great Welsh guy, really good guy, put a huge amount of time and effort into me. And Ugo arrived, I think he arrived at the summer 2002. I'm thinking I have that in my head, and had picked up a bit of an injury because he was a proper athlete. We were all pretending to be athletes, but he was a proper athlete. And he was 17 or 18 years of age, and we ended up training together, actually, for about 6 months, which it gives him an insight into me and me an insight into him. But he was the kid, but I learned an awful lot from him, actually.
See, it's funny Keith says that, because from my perspective, I was this kid at school trying to make my way in professional rugby, and I remember saying to my mum that I wasn't going to go to university. I was going to take a year out and just see how this rugby thing went. She was fairly sceptical. No, you've got to do your education further. That will give you the foundations for whatever you want to do. Anyway, I went against my mum's word, turned up at Queen's, and within a couple of months I got injured. And I found myself partnering with Keith Wood. But that was weird in itself, because the previous summer I was watching the live from 2001 where Keith Wood was the world's best player. He was named Player of the Year in World Rugby. And then he becomes your training buddy. So that was weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was speaking to friends of mine who are at school. Hey, what's this person like? What's this person like? And I'm like, my training partner's Keith Wood, you know, the world's best rugby player. So it's cool, but then you put a winger with a hooker and they just shouldn't get on. But I was in awe of Keith, and the biggest compliment I could ever give Keith is that back in 2001, 2002, we didn't have mentoring programs. As a professional, you did your thing and you cracked on. And I know that's a responsibility some of the senior players do now. We didn't have that for Keith. He didn't have to put an arm around me. He didn't have to pass on the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge he had, but he did that. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of players at Harlequins that didn't, but I'm forever indebted to Keith, because I learned a huge amount in terms of what it takes to be a professional, what it is to train properly, and what commitment really looks like. And so in terms of my first few months, it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. I didn't want to be injured, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
So when we say a mentoring program, you mean he bullied you? He made you
Yeah.
clean up after him, do what you're told?
Yeah. I mean, he was, I wouldn't say he was a dictator or anything. He led by example in the gym, but I think anyone who's grown up in a sporting environment will know that a banter/abuse is the term of endearment. And so as much as I got the odd cuddle, I did get a slap around the face occasionally, and it was, I don't know, maybe I'm kidding myself, but I look back on those times and just think it's all out of love.
Absolutely. I tell you, it's a crazy sort of time, very hard time in sport when you get injured. And look, I did injuries my whole career. I think we've discussed this before. I missed maybe half my career, a load of caps, all that sort of stuff through injury, and you get used to it. But when you're 17 or 18 years of age, and this is the dream that you set yourself out, and as you said, you argued with your mother whether you should play rugby or go to college, and a couple of months into it, you're injured. You learn an awful lot about yourself very, very quickly. And when I say I learned an awful lot from Ugo, and we don't want this to be a full love-in session, but it was that idea that and at that age, at that stage of my career, so I was 30, 31 at that stage. I knew I was on, the final furlong. So I was so hungry for any bit of information, anything that could make me a little bit better. And so I wasn't able to do a lot of weights at the very start. And I kept having the surgery, and 3 different surgeries in that 6-month period of time. But the idea that you could go and run on the track with, an athlete, because, we were rugby players. And so you're suddenly learning on your last 6 months of your career, you're actually learning how to power properly, how to transfer all the training that you'd actually done onto the track. And I didn't do a huge amount on the track because track is a really unforgiving surface for guys of my weight. It's a really tough place to be. But to suddenly go in there and to, you think you're fast, and I was pretty fast, and then you're not fast at all, actually, because all I could see. So I'd like to say I trained with Ugo, but I trained behind Ugo for an awful lot of that year. But it was interesting because it's lonely, actually. When you're injured, it's a lonely place to be.
Mm. Ugo, I think I'm right in saying, I've certainly read it of you, that at the age of 16, you ran the 100 metres in 10.6 seconds. So you were unbelievably fast. Growing up as a teenager, I know the conversation with your mum and pursuing rugby over education, were you rugby player first, sprinter second, or vice versa? Or what was your relationship with the game?
It was tough. I was actually a footballer first. I was born in North London, so all I wanted to do was just play for Arsenal. Then I went to a posh school, and they told me they didn't play chaff ball. I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Football." So they wanted to play a proper sport called rugby. I'll tell you what, when you're the only black kid, actually I wasn't the only black kid, my brother was also at the school with me. So when you're one of 2 black kids at the school, you just do what you can just to try and fit in. And so I just cracked on, got involved, but I love my athletics. But then the one thing I realised, you get to 16, 17, and you start to have to make decisions. What do you want to channel all of your ability into? You can't spread them out because you end up just being average at both. So it was rugby, and Harlequins offered me a contract. And I remember I played a few games when I finally got back fit, and they offered me a contract. Okay, I now think I'm Del Boy out of Only Fools and Horses. So what kind of money are we talking? He said, £8,000. I went, make it 8.5. And he said, yep. And I was like, sweet, absolutely done him there. I thought I was getting the best deal in the world, but it was actually just the satisfaction of knowing that I was able to earn my first ever professional contract. Didn't matter what it was. So as much as athletics was huge for me and the background, I guess lots of it was transferable, especially when you end up playing on the wing.
And how was the school experience?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, that's the birthplace for my love for rugby, and I'm still involved in it now. So if not for that school, I wouldn't have been on the pathway to playing rugby. So it was great taking a boy out of the city, sticking him in the country. I didn't know anything else. First time I've probably been away from my mum and the family. So yeah, there were challenges, but I look back at how my personality was shaped and how I was able to develop resilience, be adaptable, just learn new skills, make new friends. Some of them are still good friends with today. My experience at school was absolutely incredible. I loved it.
And why were you plucked from city to posh school out in the country?
I think my mum just realised that I had some level of sporting talent and I was never going to achieve the things I was going to do in the city. Far too many distractions. My dad wasn't around as a youngster, so I probably didn't have that fatherly figure to be able to just direct me in the right way, as well as try and keep me out of trouble, because it's really easy to get into trouble as a kid. It's really easy to get into trouble as an adult, So I probably needed a bit more attention, and I just needed to focus myself. And fair play to my mum for identifying it, because I think when you're a single mother and you've got 5 kids, it's easy just to allow things just to happen and try and sweep up the mess after. But she was really proactive and wanted to put me in a school where I could be all I could be. So I went from a classroom size of 35 to 6. But how can you not learn? And I'm still thick as you like anyway. So that just goes to show you, how far I've potentially come along. So it was all down to my mum. And the way of thanking my mum was actually then arguing with her about further my education. But I've got to say, this is probably the only time where I've gone against a mum's word and end up making the right decision.
Okay, so Mother Manya is the hero of this story. That's the short version.
Yeah, that's the short version, absolutely.
Yeah, wow, amazing. And so when you're training with Keith Wood and you've got your contract, your 8,500, very important. How quickly do you establish yourself in the team then when you get back from injury? And is it all smooth sailing? It rarely is.
No, and this is the one part of professional sport where I guess going back to the start of our career and coming to the end of Woody's, we're straddling amateur era, slowly going into professional. I look at millennials today that have only ever known professional sport. The one thing I understood was you really had to earn it. I don't care how good you were at school and what you achieved at England or Ireland underage group. When you come into professional environment, you're starting again. I walked into the change room. I wouldn't even dare put my bag on a bench. I trained next to the bench, next to the showers. And when you've got 35 men going to the showers and back, like I got changed in a puddle. And that wasn't because I was bullied or wasn't classed as good as everyone else, but I understood my position within the changing room. I wish we had a bit of that back. So I didn't take anything for granted. I mean, you got Keith Wood, Jason Leonard, Will Greenwood, Dan Luger, Tony Diprose, just to mention a few of the stars that we had in our changing room. And there's me, who played for Hampshire under-17s. Get a grip of yourself. Understand what it is. And my first training sessions, I just wasn't built. I just was not built physically robust enough to play professional rugby. So I think the one bit of advice I would do is just keep your mouth shut and just open your ears, because there's loads of guys in the changing room that you can learn a lot from, who actually want to help you and make sure they hand over the baton and you can be everything that you can be.
Mm. Do you have any strong memories of Ugo sitting politely in the corner, Keith, and knowing his place, or did he make a bit of an impact?
Well, no, he was very quiet, actually, and he was very quiet in the change room and in the team, because we weren't in too many change rooms together, actually, but we were in some of the team rooms together. Yeah. And because you're training, so we used to train early in the morning, and then the other guys would come in and train, and then you'd have a team meeting afterwards, and you're talking about the game. I knew I wasn't going to be playing for 5 or 6 months. Ugo would go in, and he was very shy at the start. Then he became really vocal and very comfortable with me, which was great. And then he'd go back quiet again once you're in the team meeting, because he didn't know the guys. He hadn't spent a huge amount of time with them. So he got to know the younger guys. He'd be comfortable with those. But, these are intimidating rooms, So, but I knew I wasn't going to be playing. The chances of me playing again for the club were slow. So I would have still been fighting my corner. So he'd have been quiet in the room. I wouldn't have been quiet in the room. And because I always thought that was something that was important. And it was, for me, at the end of my career, knowing I wouldn't play, I was very happy to argue all the time, because you're not arguing for yourself, because you're arguing for the betterment of the team. And that's something that becomes very important. And it's funny, you mentioned that's what you'd recommend. That's what I would recommend for certain kids that are coming through, and I would recommend different things for others. There was a brilliant young guy who died when we were in the club called Nick Duncan, played a few times for England, and picked up an infection when he was on holidays and died very quickly. An awful tragedy. And Nick had broken his neck when he was 17 or 18, had come back, had played again. Was a really small guy, really tiny scrum half, fit as you like, and had come back from a broken neck to go and play for England in 2021. But he has terrorised me in the training sessions. It was unbelievable. Every time there was a ruck on, he'd try and lean in over the other way to slap my bald head. So he was smacking me all the time. And he would terrorise me for the whole thing. And I just, do you know what? You kind of want to throttle him half the time. But I loved the fact that he had that sense of confidence, that he would understand that you could have fun, that you should have fun. And anyway, huge loss for us when he died. But there are different ways for kids to react to sport. I think you want kids to be themselves. Yeah. So if they are very shy, they're going to be shy. If they're outward, they want to be outward. They just need to know when you can flick that switch properly for them to get the most out of themselves.
Mm. Ugo, I listen to you now on the BBC Rugby podcast, and we see you on BT Sport, and you're very much a natural broadcaster. But also, I would say that you have a really strong philosophy on the game. So you will watch Six Nations games, and you will come on the Monday or Tuesday and say, well, I thought this, and I spotted that, and I didn't like this, and I did like that, and go through all the games and have a really strong opinion on how both teams went about their business. At what age as a player did you develop that kind of confidence in your own opinion and feel, I really understand this game? And back in the day, Keith Wood used to be arguing in the team room. Now I'm the guy who's going to take charge. When did you become that type of player? Because I'm assuming based on your broadcasting, you must have.
Yeah, I loved analysis. I always wanted to know as to why things would work, how to break down defences, and how we can use or utilise the players that we have to be able to generate the most impact out of the team collectively. That was something which probably came just slightly later in my career, I'd say like mid-20s, because I think just as important it is to be a good athlete, to be a good rugby player, to be physically fit and all those things, you've got to be a student of the game. For me, when I look at rugby now and I look at the longevity of the very best players, they get the game, they understand it, they're able to pass knowledge, and it's not just them looking after what's happening in their lane, but being able to filter it out to the rest of the team, to upskill and get everyone better, because there's nothing better when you're on the pitch and everyone knows their jobs. And even better than that is before you get on the pitch, you trust everyone has done the work, and therefore you can just go on and just crack on. So, yeah, that probably came in my early 20s. I used to badger attack defensive coaches. What about this move? What about that? I've seen they do this of restarts, but just like Keith was saying, I was able to build my way into the team, be part of the first team, and be able to meaningfully contribute. I think once you become relatively established, then you can perhaps start to put your hand up in, that's how I feel anyway, put your hand up in the team room and start to question why we start to do certain things. So analysis has always been a big part of what I do and something I really enjoy. I'm just really lucky to be able to do it in a slightly different guise. And actually broadcasting now has given me such a broader perspective on the game, because for 14 years, I looked at things through a Harlequin's lens. This is how we do it, and that was the only way. Now I'm able to look at Leinster and see the way they attack through their type 5, or watch the way they counter-attack through certain individuals, or see Saracens, how they suffocate people through defences, or look at Claremont and their power game, and actually have a broader understanding and almost have this melting pot of what rugby looks like based on different clubs, messages from coaches and different environments, and how that all comes together. So yeah, I might have this slight utopian view. And the one thing I forever feel as a pundit is a total hypocrite, because we become glory supporters and we comment on the perfect game. Oh, it was a 3-on-2. Why didn't he do this? I've butchered that a million times. But I guess it's our job to point it out. How's he missed that tackle? Why did he miss that clear out in the ruck? Do you know what I mean? All those different things. I don't become this pundit saying things because I was brilliant at all of them. It's just, I guess at home, people want to understand as to why things work and why things don't.
Mm. Something I think you were brilliant at was being a good teammate. So Keith mentioned this as well. He just said you were a great fella. And here's an interview from Paul Ackford in 2012 in The Telegraph. And he opens by saying, I sometimes make a couple of provisional calls before I interview someone, this someone being you, to get the lowdown, get a bit of background. Now, not to mates of the interviewee, but to people who work at the club or on the admin side or in the kit room, a considerable distance down the food chain from the star man. I did this with Ugo Monye, and boy, is he loved. Great guy, said one, always hanging around the offices, always asking how you are, genuinely interested. Not the type to come in, train, and then disappear off home, which some players do. He's a top bloke. So that's quite nice. Sounds like you made an effort to conduct yourself in the right way.
I mean, they're lovely words, and they're painting me to be this like perfect professional and all-round good bloke. And I think sometimes I can be a good bloke. Sometimes I won't finish a sentence. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was lucky to play at one club 14 years, and I think why you stay at one club for a lengthy period of time is because you love everything about the club. I used to get frustrated. So, for example, every Christmas we had the big game. The big it would sell out 8,500. We'd run out pyrotechnics. You'd run out, and there'd be 30,000 flags, and everyone's waving all the rest of it. We'd finish the game. We didn't always win them. So, regardless of the result, the effort was put into putting that up. And I actually felt slightly frustrated because whether we played well or not, people had gone to different levels to be able to put that on for us and for our families to be able to enjoy this and celebrate the club. So I would make a note of going into the office the following Monday and just saying, like, thank you for selling it out. Because as professional rugby players, you run out, brilliant environment, thank you very much, everyone loves you, you go home. But you forget the fact that people have been up since 5:30 and wanted to put flags out, that ticketing staff have been under pressure for the last 9 months to sell it out. Sponsors have paid through their nose to be able to put this on. So I just have a slightly deeper and more encapsulated love for Harlequins. But yeah, that's what it was. I was invested in not just the players, but the people that played there. But that, I mean, that's a nice article. I feel like I'm on an episode of This Is Your Life, and people only just say nice things about you. I'm sure if Paul will actually dive a little bit deeper, there'd be a lot of people to dish a bit of dirt to me as well.
Keith, let's dish. You can dish all the dirt you want on him.
Yeah, no, I don't dirt on him, which is kind of disturbing. I do have one final nice thing to say about him. I got a phone call from Keith Earls on the 2009 Lions tour, and he said, "What's the story of this Ugo Monye?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Is he not the nicest guy you've ever met?" I mean, I talk about a bromance. He loved the idea. You were from two totally different places. You got on like a house on fire on that tour. I think that's part of the story, which is pretty good. You only stayed at Quins. You never went anywhere else.
No.
And you loved it. And you went down with Quins, you went to the second division, then you won the second division, then you came back up, won the Premier Division. What was that like? Was that really, really turbulent at that time?
That was brutal, wasn't it? And I'll be honest and just be transparent. So yeah, we got relegated in 2005, and I was just on the cusp of making an England debut. So I got selected to go on England tour that summer, and I just felt like my individual career was doing that. The club was doing that, and I was frustrated. I spoke to Mark Evans and said, I don't think that at Quins, I just can't. You know, you've got a limited shelf life, the average career length in the Premiership, 7 years. I don't think I can be here. I want to play in the Premiership because I want to play for England, and that's the sights that I've put out for myself. He argued with me. I met with Dean Richards, the incoming boss, and he just said, "We're not going. Andre Voss isn't going. Got Andrew Merton's rocking up. Will Greenwood has stayed. You'll stay," and that was it. So it took me a little while just to adjust because I was stepping into the unknown, and I guess I didn't want to play professional rugby to not ever play at the top level. But the year was brilliant, and it was actually the birthplace of so many of the current crop of talent which you see. Your Chris Robshaws, your Joe Marlers, your Mike Browns, just to mention a few. So 2005 was tough, was really tough. Because I think the first month you found yourself doing loads of analysis and opposition, but for everyone else it's their World Cup final. So the guy that couldn't catch a high ball was just the most, he was Israel Folau in the air. He was like the most incredible athlete you've ever met. But then coming back was amazing. And then actually, you look at these things retrospectively, don't you? And you realise that was where we actually found our identity, found our culture, found our style of play, which we ended up winning the Premiership title in 2012. So, yeah, massive. Once again, another setback ended up turning out to be a huge positive.
I remember going to one of those second division matches in Bedford. Jeff Irving, the owner of Bedford at the time, said, "Come on, Woody, come on up and have a little look." And watching Mertens playing at that level, I mean, apart from the fact he was the most amazing rugby player, and he had a brain of all brains. He saw everything like 10 phases in advance. But to watch him play at a lower level, you know, because he didn't really make a tackle and he didn't really get tackled, you know. But his ability to just pick apart and always make the right decision was quite an amazing thing. What was it like playing with him? I never got the chance, actually.
Actually, I'll tell you what, meeting him for the first time was a huge disappointment. And it was because Andrew Mertens, who played for the All Blacks over 70 times, just like, I cannot wait. I'm going to score 1 million tries. Then you come in, you know what it's like, first day of pre-season, you do your fat testing. He took his top off and I was like, whose dad is this? Like where's this All Black we just signed? Like, who is this? And he didn't have the best rig, but you speak to most guys that play Super Rugby, they spend more time catching and passing than they do in the gym. We're obsessed with it in England. So all these lads who are absolutely ripped to pieces, massive chest, deadlift 300 kgs, but finish a 2-1, won't be able to do it. Mertens was total opposite. But playing with him was a joy because not only was the division he was playing in of a different standard to what he was used to, but it just allowed us just a freedom. He just threw the ball around, to your point, Woody. He could just orchestrate and manipulate defences, but then have the utter sense just to be able to tight spiral the ball 60 metres up the pitch. And above all else, what a wonderful human being. Hilarious guy.
Well, we have him on during the week, so I'm going to pick up on his dad's bod just to see whether he considers you to be the nice guy or not, you know.
We'll have a few stories to share. We're actually on an old boys WhatsApp group, and he's very good value on it. Very good.
OTB AM
on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
I'm listening to the show every morning, and you can say it's grand. It's not grand if you're not on it, though.
OTB's Mount Rushmore.
Some talent in Cork, isn't there? Wow. A few of the GA boys weren't happy, but it was my sporting hero. I was contesting, I think, against Jimmy Barry Murphy. So once you're in that company, everything is good.
Join the debate across all our social channels at Off the Ball.
It's very, very special. Believe me, I think it becomes more special when you're on the couch, because there's something unfortunately inside me that's ultra competitive, and I need to be there.
Catch the live decision-making over the next few months on OTB AM, live every weekday at 7:30 AM on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM.
With Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, celebrating 10 years of iconic sporting moments at the Aviva Stadium.
Yeah, very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, you're welcome along. You've missed a great interview with Ugo Monye, Keith Wood and Joe Malloy from last night. You can get that wherever you get your podcast, Monday Night Rugby. You can subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Podcast Network. You'll get that on Spotify. You'll get it on Pocket Cast. The best place for us to get it is actually on the Off the Ball website, offtheball.com, or indeed the Go Loud app, which has all the audio you'd ever need. Loads of good stuff up there. Dr. Una May talking about Sport Ireland's decision not to appeal the James Cronin ruling, a Paul Warwick interview, Heineken Cup final memories with Mike Ross and Alan Quinlan, and episode 2 of State of the Union, which was Keith Wood and Paul Vaughan. As he said there, Andrew Mertens and Michael Cheika are the guests on this week as we go down under to see exactly what the state of Antipodean rugby is. Eoin Sheahan, good morning to you again. How are you?
Very well now.
Are you feeling a little bit bereft when something as seismic as The Last Dance rolls to a close? It's like, oh, wow, that was amazing, but what am I going to do now?
Yeah, I thought you meant bereft in general, in life in general. But yeah, after recording our Off the Bull podcast yesterday, it's hard not to feel that way. Definitely, it's been a big part of our lives for the last 5 weeks or so. You've kind of got used to the summery Monday evenings sitting down to record with the lads. So we'll do one more pod next week and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely think that anybody who's been kind of making it an appointment to watch over the last couple of weeks will feel a little bit bereft for sure. Like it was 2 hours of every week. Like that's a big investment, even in a pandemic world. Like in the year 2020, 2 hours every week is a huge investment into anybody's life, and that's what people did with Michael Jordan.
The thing about it was, and for all the criticism of the documentary, we've been through that, what they also managed to do was kind of lift the lid a little bit on the supporting cast, and some of them were particularly interesting. Steve Kerr was the focus this week. Steve Kerr is the coach of the Warriors team, who have transformed basketball in their own way, and had not quite the dynasty maybe that people thought they were going to go on and become over the last couple of years, but certainly one of the most interesting basketball stories. And is it fair to say they've changed the game?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I think you can look at a number of teams recently. I think Houston Rockets have been up there in terms of having a huge impact on changing the game, which is a shooters league. Everybody shoots the three. Like, I was even looking at great video recently breaking down Michael Jordan's field goal attempts, and just he just wasn't a shooter, or he certainly didn't shoot from outside the 3-point line whatsoever, which was viewed upon as a more impressive thing, given he obviously has to go to the rim a lot more to get his incredible points tallies, being the scoring leader in the NBA in a huge amount of the seasons that he played. Whereas now, a lot of people are racking up massive tallies by just shooting the three successfully. So they've been part of that. Like, I mean, having Steph Curry as one of the best shooters ever played a game, having Klay Thompson, another unbelievable shooter in your team, helps to that end. And Steve Kerr has been a huge part of it. But he's always come across to me as just such an impressive man, even though it is so easy to hate the Warriors, especially after they signed Kevin Durant and made themselves clearly a dynastic team that should have dominated the league for a lot longer. As you say, it was impossible to not love Steve Kerr, whether it's when he's speaking out on social issues or whether it's just him talking in interviews and giving a little bit of an insight into his own basketball career. I genuinely think he is the nicest guy in world sport, and that's not hyperbole. I cannot think of anybody who I've never met that I like as much as Steve Kerr, to be quite honest. And he comes across so well in these last two episodes of The Last Dance. Episode 9 is, there's a 15-minute backstory on Steve Kerr. Talks about his father getting killed in Lebanon. He was over there as a professor in Beirut. And they introduced that as a sort of commonality between himself and Michael Jordan, that they obviously both lost their fathers way too young in their lives, but it was not something that they ever spoke about. Instead, the commonality between Steve Kerr and Michael Jordan was that they would both, in very different ways, be competitive beasts. Michael Jordan realised he was the best in the world and used that to drive himself and his teammates onto the next level. Steve Kerr had to drive himself onto the next level just to exist on the same court as Michael Jordan, to get his 5 shots a game. And come the end of his career, it ended up with a couple of big moments for him, where Michael Jordan would trust Steve Kerr to be the guy that would have the ball in his hands when a shot is required to win a big playoffs game. And it just details the level of work that was required for that, not being unbelievably talented, not being unbelievably big in comparison to other NBA players. He is 6'3", so to us, he is obviously a phenomenal athlete, but relative to Michael Jordan, he is not, and he didn't have as much talent as him. And it's interesting, the previous week, we see everything about how Michael Jordan drove himself and his teammates on to be the very best by being not the nicest man in the world. Steve Kerr, it was a nice guy who didn't finish last.
Yeah, so it turns out you don't need to be a bully to be an absolutely brilliant coach and leader of men. He's doing a really interesting podcast at the moment with Pete Carroll, which it's the Ringer NFL podcast, bizarrely. It's on that stream. You can get that on the Go Loud app if you want. And it's just really interesting to hear two of the world's great coaches talk to each other honestly and bring guests in whose brains they've picked at various stages over the while. So if you want more Steve Kerr goodness, it's available for you right there. Just very briefly, one of the things that I've seen a lot of people talking about is their desire to take up new sports. So people who live within a 5k radius of, say, for example, a golf club are out there at the moment. We've seen some very high-profile golfers return. The Maguire twins are on the back of one of the newspapers today, but just too late for publication, it seems. Castlebar Golf Club put up their most famous son, and you're like, who is this guy? Who is the guy with the beard, Eoin? Who is the man?
I think that is the former leader of our great country, Mr. Enda Kenny, looking like the sort of guy who, when he stepped outside his front door, had to shield his eyes from the sunlight.
That is a magnificent beard.
It's an unbelievable beard. It's an unbelievable head of hair. And the barbers in Castlebar are licking their lips at the possibility of getting that business into their door pretty soon.
Or else this is it now. This is the new normal. That's what Enda Kenny's going to look like for the rest of his life. Grizzly Adams, like, growing old disgracefully. Yeah, this is what I look like. Come at me.
I'm a castaway now, is how Enda Kenny will describe himself to his mates when he goes down to the pub. I like it. I'd like to see a former suited and booted, very clean shaven person letting themselves go in their later years. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of a shabby beard and a bit of a mop of a head. We were all, I was going to say we've all been there, Enda, but we are all there. We are all there right now with you, urging you on. You can be our leader of the shabby people of Ireland.
Were you clean shaven for a day last week? Is that what happened?
No, I haven't been clean shaven in a while. It's clearly, obviously, when I take a little bit off the beard, it looks like I'm clean shaven. So thank you for complimenting me on the fullness of my facial hair, Ger.
Okay, fair enough. That was awkward. Let's move on. Sheahan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. A bit empty this morning after The Last Dance ending. I feel like I've lost a part of my life that I had for the last 5-6 weeks. It's quite a sad morning.
This was a big family event for you, I understand.
Yeah, it was a big family event. We finished episode 7 and 8 last week, my dad and I, and immediately my mum was sitting in the kitchen and she said, "What are you talking about?" And we told her about The Last Dance. And we told her that the last 2 episodes were this week, so yesterday. She proceeded to watch the entire series, but she watched 5 episodes yesterday. So she watched half the series yesterday. Absolutely loved it. Wouldn't be into sport massively, into basketball massively at all. Wouldn't have known the story of MJ. But absolutely annihilated 5 episodes in a row yesterday. And I mean 5 episodes, one after the other. She didn't take a break. So it showed the addictiveness of it. And look, I kind of felt that as well. Once you think 2 episodes and almost 2 hours of watching every week is enough. But at the end of it all, you're left feeling a little bit empty and wanting more, I guess.
I wonder if there will be more. I wonder if there is, now, if the Jordan book industry is huge. The first one comes out and then everybody's like, oh, hang on, there's another aspect to this. Or is this the end of the Michael Jordan documentaries? Does nobody ever try and make one because these 10 episodes exist?
Yeah, it's been done. I think it's been done. It's hard to top this. And the reaction on Twitter is, this is one of the greatest sports documentaries I have ever seen. So if you try MJ, you're going to have that bar immediately compared to it. I mean, there's, not to give any spoilers, but there's so many good parts in those last 2 episodes. Owen's mentioned Steve Kerr. What a likeable guy. There's emotion. One of my favourite parts was they were kind of talking about how MJ built up this reputation without the use of social media. So he had no Twitter. He couldn't post videos every day promoting himself. But yet he was this massive iconic figure, not only in Chicago or America, but in the world. Yeah. And even when, I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio comes to him after the 98 NBA Finals win, and MJ is only showing a passing interest in Leonardo DiCaprio. This show is like, oh yeah, thanks. Cheers, Leo. And now I'm going to move on and talk to someone else.
He was all over.
Doesn't care, but
he was all over. He was all over Seinfeld. He loved Seinfeld. He loved that kind of. So I don't know. Maybe by that stage, I mean, bear in mind this is '98. Leonardo DiCaprio is like a rising star, but not quite the Leonardo DiCaprio of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like.
This is the year after Titanic. Wasn't Titanic '97? Surely at this moment he's riding on the crest of a wave, but like. Extraordinary. I mean, he was the most famous person in the world at that particular moment in time, you'd guess.
I think Jordan was just focused on getting onto beer. Like, thank you, Leo. But like the Seinfeld thing was pre-game. He was chilled out. Leo caught him in the middle of celebrating a championship win. And Leo, I've never seen the man awkward, but he's unbelievably awkward in that confrontation with Jordan. He's like, hey, some real iconic moments out there, Michael. And
poetic, I think he used. Right, that was poetic, man. It's like, oh, come on, Leo. You could have come up with something better than that. But like, there was even the scene of Michael on the bus as well, listening to music. Was it after the match? Oh no, it was on the way to Utah, I think, for one of the games. But he's listening to music. There's already a Twitter profile of what was Michael listening to, and it's an 11-second clip of Michael listening to a number of songs. So Vanessa Carlton, 1,000 Miles, I think was my favourite one so far. So give that Twitter account a follow if you can. There are already a lot of suggestions as to what exactly Mike. I know he says in the thing what he was listening to, but we all like to make up our own suggestions as to what he was listening to. And Twitter has done it for us.
The power of the internet. 0879 180 180 if anybody wants to WhatsApp us this morning with any of your comments or views on anything that we're covering. It is 15 minutes past 8. Let's get into the sports news. We're starting with a potential trophy presentation.
Indeed, there could still be a formal trophy presentation if Liverpool secure the Premier League title, lads. The clubs are set to resume training in small groups today. That's under phase 1 of the league's Project Restart. Strict medical protocols will remain in place. No contact will be allowed, of course. Surprise inspections, GPS tracking and video analysis are methods that could be used to ensure clubs adhere to new safety guidance. Liverpool, of course, need just 2 more wins if and when the Premier League resumes to seal a first title for them in 30 years. Meanwhile, Premier League medical practitioners have revealed they feel under pressure to conform. Almost half of those surveyed don't feel they've been adequately consulted about a return to play. Celtic have been crowned Scottish Premiership champions for the 9th season in a row. That's after the campaign was ended on a point per game calculation. At a meeting yesterday, the top flight clubs reached a unanimous decision. The campaign could not be restarted due to the coronavirus. That decision also means Hearts have been relegated to the Scottish Championship. They are considering legal action and say they would like to see a restructured league pyramid expanding the top flight. Speaking of Celtic, loads of great stuff on the offtheball.com website this morning, including Paddy Bonner, former Celtic and Republic of Ireland keeper, discussing that famous penalty shootout against Romania in 1990 and how nervous Daniel Timothy looked when he walked up to take that infamous penalty that Bonner saved now, making us all delighted, I guess. But some really great insights on how he worked with Jerry Payton as a goalkeeping coach and how he played in a Scottish Cup final with Celtic just before the World Cup and had conceded 9 penalties. They lost 9-8, and how he'd improved his standing before that World Cup in terms of penalties. The Bundesliga, of course, continued last night, lads. Kai Havertz didn't waste time in reminding people why he's one of Europe's hottest young properties. The 20-year-old scored twice for Bayer Leverkusen. That was in their 4-1 win at Werder Bremen to move them to within a point of the top 4 and move Bremen closer towards relegation from the Bundesliga for the first time in 37 years. To rugby, Robin Copeland says he's fulfilling an ambition by playing in France. The 32-year-old has left Connacht, signing a 3-year deal with French second-tier side Charente. Meanwhile, in cricket, their governing body has recommended a change of rules to ban the use of saliva to shine the ball. The ICC Cricket Committee wants the change implemented to protect players from COVID-19. Traditionally, saliva has been used to help smooth one side of the ball to help it swing. Formula 1 news now. Fernando Alonso is ready to return to Formula 1 in 2021, according to his main advisor. It's understood Spain's 2-time world champion has had talks with Renault about a possible comeback, but the team has not made a final decision. Alonso left F1 at the end of 2018 and does plan to race at the Indianapolis 500 when that does manage to take place. Last week it was announced that Germany's Sebastian Vettel was leaving Ferrari at the end of the season to be replaced by Alonso's compatriot Carlos Sainz. Daniel Ricciardo leaving Renault to take up Sainz's place at McLaren. And finally, lads, in France there's racing today at Chantilly, with first off at 5 to 10.
Shane, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. That is Shane Hanna with us there this morning at 17 minutes past 8. Here's what's coming up on the show for you today. Very busy programme for you. As Eoin was talking about, the very last episode of The Last Dance aired, which means that we'll bring you the second last Off the Ball that's coming your way from 9 o'clock. Sports pages in just a moment. And Ciaran Kelly is our top 8 Aviva moments. I think a stunning victory for him yesterday. A world record 4 penalties saved in a row. He's going to tell us the story of that. We're going to join him from the Middle East, where he's coaching at the moment, to find out how lockdown is going there for him, but also to look back on a very, very special night for him as well. And the Last Dance review, Off the Ball, coming your way at 9:05. Now let's get into the papers.
OTB AM.
And we are going to start with offtheball.com as we always do this morning. And here's what's on the website for you. Ugo Monye and Bloodgate, a stain that will forever be there. Interesting to get the insider's perspective of Bloodgate from the Quinn side. We've obviously heard a good bit about it down through the years from Leinster's side. But again, a sliding doors moment for Irish rugby and for Leinster rugby, because if they'd lost that game, then they wouldn't have obviously won the Champions Cup that year, and who knows what would have happened. Sport Ireland on Cronin doping ban, unlikely to get a significant increase. That was Una May speaking last night. Kissing his teammate was an innocent mistake. The Bundesliga is back. Many will seek to challenge us, but we deserve it. It's Neil Lennon talking about the 9 in a row. And as Shane said, there are loads of great stuff from Paddy Bonner. When he walked up, you could see the nerves. Paddy Bonner about facing Daniel Timofte.
I'm buying the accidentally kissing thing, by the way.
Yeah,
like,
well, it's not on purpose. I mean, it's not.
And I think that even on Saturday when you see Haaland's celebration, I'm like, well, this is obviously a bit where Haaland told his teammates to back off because he's doing his dance thing, which we have seen in the past. But actually what it is people respecting social distancing by not giving him a hug. So I think we were all getting conditioned to it, and especially if you're one of the players who's got that adrenaline rush, it's extra hard for you to abide by those rules. The Irish Independent this morning.
How conditioned are people getting? Were you out and about yesterday? Were you comfortable with the fact that everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing?
I think so, yeah. I think social distancing is just a reality now. I think that have a lot of people been in phase 1 mode for a little while already? Not like, I mean, what is phase 1 mode really? Like, there's no sort of sense.
Let's go. Party. That's what I think. That's what everybody... This is Ireland. Everybody's going to go buck mental.
Yeah. The ability to meet people outside, like the house party clause hasn't come into the phase just yet. I think that's phase 3, is it? Maybe July 20th, before that becomes something that is acceptable to do. At that point, then, I'd expect Ireland to go buck mental once the house party... They haven't called it as such, funnily enough, the medical professionals, but they should do the house party clause.
Actual real house party, not virtual house party.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. That's when things change. Of course, people have been flouting those rules. Like a friend of mine actually saw across their apartment the other day a group of people out in the balcony, clearly having a house party. If you're having a house party, stay away from the balcony, is what I would say. Or if you're going out for a cigarette, take turns in twos, so it makes it look like it's just residents living in the place, and turn the music down.
Wow! Grandpa Simpson angry at the cloud there. Eoin. This is a bit rich coming from you, who, like, as soon as that July 20th thing happens, we're not going to see you for about 3 weeks because you'll just be in one long continuous house party. I mean, you're looking forward to one of the best summers of your life, ultimately.
Absolutely. I am. I've got everything planned out, and everybody is invited. The Irish Independent this morning leads with the picture there of the Maguire twins, as you mentioned already, Ger. Golf family back on the tee. Maguire twins get back into full swing. Green light for first of Pool's 3 steps to title heaven. Meanwhile, this is about the possibility that the Premier League will allow Liverpool to go and have a trophy presentation. But Didi Hamann has been on the record here, insisting numbers must be right or June 12th resumption will be delayed. Then the other story here on the back of the Irish Independent is that Sexton admits it's hard to stay motivated in lockdown, like all of his rugby comrades, isolating alone away from the players at the moment. At least they're with their family, and with the season being suspended, you think you're in good shape, and then all of a sudden it gets suspended again and again and again. So he's finding it tough at the moment, as I'd imagine a lot of the rugby players are.
The Irish Examiner is first for me here this morning. Yeah. So Federation warns many sports won't return without funding. That was the statement issued yesterday by the Federation of Irish Sports, and they're concerned about the money that's required to run the NGBs. Golf clubs report high compliance upon return. Drizzle failed to dampen spirits as Ballyliffin eyes staycationers. And tennis courts new members as clubs reopen for business after lockdown. Cork players not opposed to careers down under, says agent. So perhaps some young GAA players are looking at Australia as an option, given that it's going to be very interesting to see how the economy recovers and how quickly the economy recovers in the aftermath of this. So, was it Ryan McBenamin who was in the papers yesterday talking about the fear of emigration being very serious from a GAA perspective? Ordinarily, in a situation like this, you would say, yeah, immigration is going to be a huge issue, but is it going to be such a big issue if countries aren't taking people in, if there are no jobs there either? Again, I suppose recovery might be at different paces in different places around the world.
The back page of the London Times this morning leads with the story about Callum Hudson-Odoi. Hudson-Odoi arrested after claim of rape. He was arrested on suspicion of rape in the early hours of Sunday morning after a female guest at his West London home was taken to hospital. The other stories here on the back of the London Times this morning: cricket bans use of saliva, as you've mentioned, and league to spy on training. Premier League inspectors will be sent out to make sure that clubs are not cheating with the amount of training done by their players or breaching social distancing guidelines before the season resumes.
The Irish Times this morning leading with that story we covered yesterday. Sheahan, the Kerryman, headed for Georgia Tech. This is the story of David Sheahan, who was a brilliant guest on the programme yesterday. You should check out the video of that. We'll repost it as well for you. Celtic's title triumph should not be diminished. We'll play some video from Gweedore in a couple of minutes' time celebrating Celtic's title win. 13 points clear with one game played more than Rangers, but I think everybody accepted that Celtic were going to win that title. And crowdless games could help bring some changes for the better about how we're going to be able to hear what the influence that certain players have over the referees, for example. Now would be a good time to get back the old tapes of what exactly Richie McCaw would be saying to a referee during a game, wouldn't it?
As in to learn from the best?
Well, just to hear exactly how that went, you know? That would have been interesting.
Was he hourly influencing the referee, or was it just because he is Richie McCaw and therefore you don't give a penalty against Richie McCaw?
I'd say there was a good bit of chat. And educating the referee about what was happening, you know?
Of course.
Keeping them informed.
When is his refereeing career actually starting? It's the only natural pathway for him at this point, isn't it? Given how well he dictated the rules of the games being implemented in the games in which he played, it's only fair and right that he dons the green jersey of the referee at some point soon. I'd be keen to know when that's kicking off for him.
I'd say he's retired. I know, he retired from everything at the same time. He was one of the first people to be able to simultaneously referee and play. It's he's never going to be able to match that again.
The omnipresent Richie McCaw. The back page of the Mirror this morning is "Here we go." Premier League boss insists Bundesliga's successful return to action has fired belief that season in England will now be completed. This is Richard Masters, who's been speaking again yesterday. Klopp will cop trophy. Liverpool will get a special presentation when they finally claim their crown. And Neil Lennon there, pictured with the Scottish Premiership title, 9 in a row for Celtic. So now next year, potentially looking to become the first club in Scottish football history to do a 10 in a row. It's kind of mad that there has been 2 9 in a rows already done in Scottish football.
Yeah, it's a very competitive league up there. What are you talking about? What issues are you drawing from? What are you saying? The Star this morning, let's make it 10. That's Neil Lennon, pictured with the trophy, as you just said. Lennon eyeing 10. Byrne knows return risks. This is the FAI's Chief Medical Officer talking about their pathway to return. And golf's great opportunity. That's the 3 Maguires, the 2 girls and their brother Audrin playing golf yesterday. So is there one here? Yeah, league look to honour Klopp King. So they'll have to give them the trophy at some point, right?
The Irish Daily Mail this morning is "I want more." Lennon's joy after Celtic claim crown. UEFA wait to resolve Euros issue meanwhile. So the UEFA chiefs have put back the next executive committee meeting by 3 weeks until June 17th. So this is going to iron out issues with the 12 host cities for the deferred Euro 2020 final. So this is going to be a pivotal 3 weeks or so for Ireland, whether or not we're going to have the same amount of games or potentially more games next summer. And Blues Ace accused of rape there as well. That's the back page of the Irish Daily Mail.
Spies and lows is the back page of The Sun this morning. Stars back training, spies, Prem snoops to enforce rules. Was it somebody from Donegal up the trees in Kerry? Is that the story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get I'm sure that person who was up the tree in Killarney will be now safely employed by the Premier League to be one of the snoops. Marcelo Bielsa, I would have thought, could be another person you could do. It will be interesting when you're training on the training pitch and you're like, what is that thing moving in the corner? And there's like a bush with feet underneath it, kind of running away from you. That's how you know that you've been watched by these COVID inspectors.
And count up to 10, that's the story there. The lows, no fans for 1 year warning, and travel rules may KO Euro ties. So we might have no European football, and we might have no fans at games for a year. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens. But football is going to be back in less than a month today. That'd be all right. We'd all welcome that, wouldn't we?
It's a game changer, isn't it? If the Premier League comes back, that's a huge slice of sporting normality right back into your life, I would have thought. So absolutely. Back page of the Herald is call to rescue sport. O'Connor, we need support now from government. This is Mary O'Connor, the CEO of the Federation of Irish Sport, talking about the organisations that her umbrella organisation represents, 81 NGBs, 29 local sports partnerships, looking for a resilience fund to help clubs and organisations that may not survive the financial impact of COVID-19. And Liverpool set to get trophy presentation, and also Blue Days in our new series in the Herald's Dublin Stars of the Past pick their favourite game.
And the Guardian Their back page there is a picture of two kids with 9 league champions in a row, 2012 to 2020. A year without crowds, Premier League restart in years, but fans face lengthy absence, and spit polish ban opens door for bowlers' pores. What? No more boiled sweets, but sweat is fine. That's it. Wow. The Cricket Committee, which is chaired by the former India spin bowler Anil Kumble, has decided to recommend that the use of saliva to polish a cricket ball should be prohibited for the foreseeable future. By contrast to medical advice, it's highly unlikely coronavirus can be transmitted through sweat, and the committee saw no need to prohibit the use of sweat to polish the balls. Sweaty balls, Eoin. It's the future of cricket is sweaty balls. Don't spit on your balls. Make them be sweaty, and you can swing away. Or spin, whichever you want. You might be a swinger, you could be a spinner. It's up to you.
First they took our sport, then they took our freedom. Now they've taken my boiled sweets. It's a dark, dark day for saliva users in the world. The Irish News this morning, 9 in a row for Celts. Lennon says boys' sides now on a perfect 10, and Hearts are pondering legal action over their relegation.
And do I have one last one for you? I do have it, the Telegraph. Should have had this one prepared earlier, Eoin. Actually, yeah, there it is, sorry. Telegraph for you this morning. Players face 14-day isolation in hotels. Celtic celebrate title as Hearts fight relegation, and Championship plans tea time kickoffs to finish season. So the English Football League plans to make the remainder of the Championship a festival of football with midweek matches broadcast at tea times and in evenings. This is a good idea, which I think is beginning to gain traction. Saturday afternoon is kind of pointless, right? We actually can go out and do stuff on a Saturday afternoon, put the games on midweek, have a 5 o'clock, a 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock kickoff. And no?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Sorry, I just thought you were finishing a point there. Like, absolutely, yes, we would do this. And I think with, if you're looking at the, say, British television schedule on an overall point of view, you might say to yourself, well, we've actually got a lot of Premier League games taking up these spots of like Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. You can have football every single night. There's definitely scope now to do, I don't know, a 5:30 Saturday night show where you have 8 fixtures all going off concurrently, and we finally have this English domestic football red zone. Like, we've had it for the Champions League in the past, and it is brilliant. It absolutely works. And I think for a division like the Championship, could they potentially even do it for a lower division? Who knows? It would be sensational television. But absolutely, you're right. Like, why were we so... We don't need to cling to early kickoffs anymore. People don't need to go about their day after watching the match. They can go about their day beforehand because they don't need to be at the stadium.
That's the thing. It's fans no longer need to be there, so no big deal. Let's just fix this now and away we go.
Oh yeah, like there's even just on scheduling, there's so many opportunities here as well. Like, are we disappointed by the Bundesliga for not trying out something insane? Like, there was nothing. It was just football without fans. The only thing missing was fans. They didn't try anything new out at the weekend.
It was very, we have a situation that we need to solve. Let's solve that situation. And look,
very German.
I understand how other matters might have taken precedence when it came to coming up with plans. I understand that. And maybe next week or the week after, or maybe the start of next season is when we'll actually begin to see the German creativity, the Vorsprung durch technique, and that'll be fine. You know, I don't mind if that's the case, right?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a bit of innovation. Like, try something out. Like, it is, I guess you had a bit of music played in the stadium, but that's played anyway, I'd imagine, in Dortmund, for example. So, yeah, a bit more innovation. And, like, by the sounds of things, it could be something that the Premier League are actually going to look into because the television money costs so much. And it might just be a little bit more insight, a few more interviews, and a bit more of a peek behind the scenes. But I'm all on board for that.
Yeah, OK. One thing that we did want to show you was the celebrations in Gweedore last night. This was from Kevin Cassidy's Twitter account. You spotted this, Eoin. It was remarkable scenes as you begin to really understand exactly what Celtic means to the people of Donegal.
Yeah, this is it's like Gweedore have just won the championship. Really.
Yeah, you could compare and contrast this with what happened last year when they went on their run. You can hear there, people were pretty happy about it.
That's extraordinary for just for a community to be that rallied around Celtic actually winning a championship. without actually kicking a ball to win it is unreal. That's where in Ireland will we see this sort of parade when Liverpool win the Premier League is what I want to know.
I don't think you will. I think that there's actually I'd say so we Packie Bonner on obviously on Sunday for a feature-length interview, and it's worth digging out. But just kind of the importance of Donegal to Celtic and it being their football team isn't something that I think the rest of the country fully understands until you see scenes like this, and you're like, well, that's not nothing. That's a real thing there.
Yeah, it's hugely significant. In fairness, it's not their club overseas or in Scotland or whatever. It does feel like a part of their community there. And look at that, like that's insane. That's incredible. That's not scenes you'd see too often, even if a club up the road happened to win something. So for Celtic to win the Premiership title in Scotland and for people in Donegal to be reacting like that tells you all you need to know about the relationship between the two places.
It also helps that it's post-lockdown and everybody's in the car and they're like, right, come on, let's go. What's that noise? I don't care, let's go. We're celebrating. Yeah. What are we celebrating? The end of lockdown? Not really.
Didn't look like a great day up there yesterday. That's the only thing. You kind of have an itch to get out to somewhere rural at these points and go isolate up there. But clearly we're getting the good weather in Dublin, and we're not saving it for those up above in Donegal.
That was the wild Atlantic way, truly, absolutely properly as well. All right, if you want to get in touch with us here, 0879 180 180 is the number. Now, Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, is marking the 10-year anniversary of the official opening of the Aviva Stadium and its proud long-term sponsorship of the iconic venue. To celebrate this milestone, Aviva are paying tribute to some of the most iconic sporting moments of the last decade. Feel free to join in. You can follow Aviva Ireland on Instagram and Twitter, and you can share your favourite Aviva Stadium memories using the hashtag #SafeToDream. So we've been having different matches. Match one yesterday was Shane Long against Germany up against the 2019 FAI Cup final. It was a bit of a landslide for Shane Long, as you would expect. So, an amazing moment. Germany were the world champions. The whole town was absolutely on fire for the whole day, going, the world champions are coming to town today, and we're playing them football. And we're all a little bit concerned about what they might do to us. But they didn't do anything to us. We beat them. Leo Messi in town was the second one yesterday, right? And it was Messi comes to Dublin. Everybody's like, oh yeah, well, that's obviously Leo Messi. He is a celebrity. He's going to win this. But no. He didn't win this. Ciaran Kelly saves all 4 Rovers penalties. Rom Tome, 60-40 was the essentially figure. 59-41 is the, if I'm being pedantic about it. But 4 penalty saves in a row, a world record in a Rovers versus Rovers, some Rovers on Rovers action as Sligo Rovers beat Shamrock Rovers in the penalty shootout in the Aviva all of 10 years ago. And Ciaran Kelly is actually the star of the show, right? 2.5 million views on YouTube. People have watched this. Ciaran Kelly, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys.
Is it good afternoon, technically, where you are?
It's 10:30 or just nearly 20 to 11 now at this stage.
All right, perfect. So still
here in Qatar.
Still the morning in Qatar. What are you doing in Qatar?
I suppose still on this football journey. It's taken me to the Middle East, so I'm just having fun and continuing the football trade that we started off.
You're a coach now, is that right?
Yeah, so while I was playing, I kind of had a lot of time in the afternoons because we were training full-time, so looking to just get out into the local community in Sligo and Mayo and just help kids. But I suppose with the challenge, it brought me to do my UEFA B licence and do my UEFA A licence in 2015 and 16. So I suppose I wanted to explore that a little bit more and see where this can take me.
That's really interesting because like the A licence is a long piece of work. It's not something you kind of do a night here, a night there, and 6 months later you're qualified. It's a proper significant investment in time and finances to actually get it. So you're kind of committed to being a coach if you actually want to do it properly and if you want to achieve through it, you have to go wholeheartedly into it.
Yeah, I suppose I've been fortunate as well to be a part of such amazing squads and worked with such good managers. So picking up those skill sets that they provided us players was I suppose I was fortunate enough as well, you know.
And how did you end up in Qatar?
Yeah, so the opportunity, I suppose, back in 2012, while I finished my B licence, I was looking at, you know, my next step. So the plan was to get the A licence by 2016 and to move abroad. So my now wife, we decided in 2014 that we'd take the next step. So I suppose we was 2 years in the building, and she moved here in 2016, and I came out shortly afterwards.
And did you have a job to come to when you got there? Did you know exactly where you were going?
I started with a football academy here. It just gave me the time to network and really, you know, explore the Qatar Football Association and the leagues there. A guy called Keith Young, he had a club here. He was a founding member of the club. And I don't know if you're familiar with a guy called Stephen Goff. He would have played with Shamrock Rovers, Longford, Bray. He was the assistant manager, so when we found we were both working here, we connected fairly quickly, you know.
And am I right in saying that at that stage the club was kind of in one of the lower tiers?
Yeah, so it was basically amateur turning semi-professional in the third division. So I suppose when I came on board, the challenge for me and really the goal was to turn the team professional. So fortunate enough, that happened in early 2019. So we won the third division, and there was a rigorous process of probably in around 6 months. So August 2019, we got promoted to the QSL2, and we're on the verge of the whole club turning professional now, where we'll have a professional academy under 19, under 17, under 15, and under 13 as well. So that's just around the corner. Hopefully, when COVID-19 eases out and we can start the re-entry. So, and what is it actually like in Qatar? How strenuous has the lockdown been? Is it the same for you guys as it is for everywhere else around the world? Pretty much the exact same. I'd say if anything, we're probably a week ahead. So kind of March the 9th, the schools closed. We've been in lockdown, you know, mass and are mandatory at the moment here in Qatar. We're just on the final part of Ramadan here. So the QFA announced just on Sunday there that teams can go back to training on June the 9th, but in small groups of 4 to 6 players. And the league still has to finish here. So they're going to finish the league starting the 24th of July. And it's going to finish in roughly 3 weeks. Right. Is the weather going to be okay for summer football? Yeah, so it's 37 degrees at the minute here at 11:15 in the morning. So wow. It's quite warm, but I suppose anyone that has visited the Middle East will know the facilities here are second to none. You've got air-conditioned stadiums where, you know, at pitch level, you know, it could be the showgrounds on a Saturday night. That is pretty amazing. And obviously, like, it's a very interesting time to be out there to see what's happening in preparation for the World Cup. Was that kind of part of your thinking when you picked Qatar to move to, that, like, there's obviously going to be a huge investment in football anyway? There's always a plan, and I suppose with the mentors that have been helping me throughout my coaching career and football career, they had seen, I suppose, the opportunity from the announcement in 2011 that Qatar will host the 2022 World Cup. So, yes, Qatar World Cup 22 was definitely in my mind at the time. What kind of a coach are you? You're not just a goalkeeper coach, or are you a goalkeeper coach specialising in goalkeeping, or like what is your ambition as a coach and philosophy? Yeah, so kind of at the moment I'm kind of director of football, looking at the academy manager, director of football role, looking at the whole concept of the club. Building a playing structure throughout all the academies. I suppose I'm one that's philosophical in relation to the technique, the tactical analysis, the physical elements of the game, but most importantly, the social part of the game. The social influence here is huge. The impact that we can have on players here, and I suppose I've been fortunate enough to work with managers that were very good dealing one-to-one and having those skills and obviously passing those skill sets on to me.
Just on the fact that the club can have a social impact, where are the kids coming from largely when it comes to your academy that you're working with? Are they local kids that have grown up in the area?
Yeah, so it's probably a ratio of probably 1 local to 4 expats. So lots of nationalities all over the world, and I suppose that was a challenge, working with different cultures, language as well. So I had to adapt as well, picking up different parts of Spanish, Portuguese, and obviously Arabic as well. So I suppose this is the challenge that I wanted to test myself as well as a person, you know, and obviously second as a coach.
Does football fulfil the same sort of social role then in a place like Qatar as it would in Ireland or in the United Kingdom? Like, I mean, with the World Cup coming up, obviously in 2022, there's an opportunity here for the country to try and put forward a positive image around the world. But is there going to be something more meaningful than that? Is the investment in football going to allow people to get more opportunities through football?
100%. You know, I suppose the World Cup is going to be here for 4 weeks. When Qatar was announced back in 2011, they've been building the whole country for these 4 weeks. I don't know if you've seen the Gary Neville interview there at Christmas that was on Sky Sports, his visit to Qatar. You know, it's incredible the amount of work that's been done here. I've been here 3 years, and it feels like every time I drive on the highway, there's something new being built. You know, there's hotels going up in the space of a couple of weeks, but the long-term effect that the association are doing here as well, looking to drive football in communities, and that's something, or the ethos of what Dole Pearl Academy and Lucille have done as well, that we're connecting to schools and really using football as a tool to develop good people first. I know it's a cliche, but at the same time, it's important to have that mentality.
It's been controversial with human rights questions about the building of the stadiums and stuff. How engaged do you need to be as somebody who lives there with those stories?
Yeah, they're obviously going to have lots of various opinions here. You know, it's difficult because, you know, there's conditions of obviously today, 37 degrees and the working conditions. I do know that they've changed a lot over the recent years and period. From originally back in 2011, 12, 13, a lot of structures have been put in place to make sure the health of workers have increased. But definitely for me, it's you know, people talk about Russia being a fantastic World Cup. I definitely think that 2022 is going to outshine them all.
Definitely is a story that we're going to continue to follow here. Let's talk about, it's 10 years ago. Can you believe it's 10 years ago, essentially, since the FAI Cup final in the Aviva Stadium?
It doesn't feel like 10 years ago because I suppose the memories are still fresh. But yeah, I suppose it's been an amazing period in probably Sligo Rovers' history. That kind of, I suppose if I'm going to identify when did it all start, probably earlier part of that year when we won the EA Sports Cup. That gave us the confidence to believe we can push on and start winning major trophies. And I suppose that was the start of our history, of our period of 2010 to probably 2014.
How much of the penalty shootout do you actually remember now?
In detail? Yeah, so kind of the effect of 2009 Cup final, the previous year when we were 1-0 up with probably 6-7 minutes to go, and Alan Keane had a header back that I suppose I hesitated, and you know, it was the decision that I kind of stole the aim as I tripped him up, and Alan Kelly pointed to the spot. That penalty had a huge effect on me for a long period of time afterwards, and I suppose there was a rebuilding stage there where probably only my family and friends know that history behind the scenes. But definitely looking into 2010, I was a stronger person, and I suppose I used those strengths to I suppose, deal with the situation of the penalty shootout in 2010. As soon as the final whistle went in extra time, I got off the pitch, and I used that moment to I suppose, calm myself down and not get involved in the emotions of the whole occasion that was happening on the pitch. Because the crowd, I suppose, there was 30-odd, 6,000 or something. It was a fantastic occasion for the League of Ireland itself. And I think the FAI had huge credit to play with that, opening up the Aviva. So it was kind of interesting moments because I didn't speak to the players or I didn't speak to the manager, even though probably they made a few attempts. I was kind of shying away that I knew I had to be kind of zoned out and use that time to focus on the challenge,
I hadn't realised that the 09 had such an impact on you. And in terms of becoming a better goalkeeper, like, was it a psychological impact?
Oh, most definitely. Probably first I looked at it as a person. I suppose I looked at everything that I was doing outside the game. Training wise, was there areas where I could improve personally, mentally as well? Because I suppose I wasn't able to deal with the loss in the final, and how I dealt with it probably wasn't the correct way. But definitely those strengths or those techniques that I used in preparation for 2010 definitely helped me. And I suppose if you look at the penalty shootout, I felt I was in control, even though, should a goalkeeper be in control of a penalty shootout? It's some people say it's a lottery, and I suppose the penalty taker is favoured. But I looked at it quite differently, and I felt that it was something where I believed in what we were doing would help us succeed.
As they're happening and as you're saving them, and if you saved the first one and you saved the second one, are you like, something special is happening here? Or are they actually all got to take each individual penalty on its merits?
It was one penalty at a time. I think that's what I was trying to speak to myself. If I remember back, Eoin Doyle took our first penalty, and I was in the corner flag. I didn't look at our penalties for the main reason I didn't want to emotionally get involved in the shootout. So I remember I was just sipping on a bottle of water and just focusing on a piece of ground, or while our penalties were going in or not going in, as the case was happened. So every time I'd hear the reaction from the crowd, I just knew it was my turn to go in goal, and I didn't really focus on the score. I suppose when Gary Twiggs' first penalty, it was just to my right hand side, and I just focused on his technique. The way his stance was, I knew he was tired, and I knew he'd go back to his safe kick of opening his body up and just pushing it into the corner. And I was fortunate enough to guess the right way,
There's one, I think it's the third one, comes straight at you.
The Chris Turner's penalty, I suppose it was, I'm going to cheat with that one. Chris Turner took a penalty in 2009 for Dundalk in Oriel Park. And I remember at the time, I went to my right-hand side and he drilled it down the middle. And afterwards I kind of knew at the time that on my dive he's going to drill it. So some strange focus within me at that time said, this is the same penalty, same technique, he's going to strike it. So I don't know, I kind of held my position as long as I could, and if I had to go, I could still use my left leg to push off, but I kind of stayed and held my ground, and fortunate enough, it worked out right in the end.
That's the bravest save, is it, of the four? Because that's the one where you end up looking a bit foolish if he just slides it either side. But actually, the bravest thing to do is to stand there and wait and wait and wait.
It's. I suppose when you put it in that context, I suppose the decision first and foremost while he's on his run up to stay ground, stay set. I suppose it was brave, but I don't know. I was full of confidence from the first two penalties, and I felt that because I had such a clear mindset that I was able to make that decision. And I just felt time was so slow. Even on the second penalty save, you know, I don't think I celebrated it. I was just like, I felt that I was in so much control at that moment in time. And I think that the fourth penalty save, you can even see how confident I was that I went so early. I made my mind up that Paddy Kavanagh was going to my left-hand side, and I went so early. I think it was on the ground when it hit me. And I felt, I know it's probably a little bit cheeky, but I was thinking about how we were going to celebrate with the lads. So that's how confident I felt at that moment in time prior to the kick.
2.7 million views on YouTube. It's a fairly sensational thing, like a decade on, to have saved 4 successive penalties in the penalty shootout. And they were like all on target. You know, it's not like there was 3 saves and 1 wide. It was like they're all proper saves.
Yeah, I suppose I could be in that situation only for the work of my teammates, because, you know, at the same time, they would have helped me out getting over probably the impact that 2009 had. And I just felt that the work that we had put in behind the scenes, you know, penalty shootouts were a regular thing in Sligo Rovers training sessions at the end, and everybody got involved in them. Whether there were cups of teas or cans of Coke on offer at the end, it was. We always enjoyed it.
You've beaten Leo Messi in the poll yesterday. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I woke up to. I did realise it. I woke up to a lot of tweets this morning and private messages, and I suppose it's nice company to be in. But it obviously shows the appreciation that the Irish people have for the League of Ireland, and I think, well, hopefully in the next period of 6 to 12 months, that the backing that the people will get behind the league.
If Lionel Messi were to take 5 consecutive penalties, how many of them would you save?
He's the best player that ever played the game. He's obviously going to score 3.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Ciaran, you've been great with your time. Enjoy whatever's coming next, and hopefully you get to get back on the football field sooner rather than later. It sounds like it's a life less ordinary anyway. Thanks a million for joining us today, and congratulations on a great poll victory.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, okay?
It's good stuff there. The polls continue today, so that's Ciaran Kelly saving all 4 Rovers penalties in the 2010 FAI Cup final shootout. The polls that are live now is Johnny Walter's goals against Bosnia versus Jack Charlton's homecoming. So the emotion of Jack Charlton's return versus the sheer bloody-mindedness and force of nature that was John Walters that night against Bosnia to qualify for the Euros. The quarter-final this afternoon is going to be Shane Duffy against Denmark versus Seanie Maguire's goal against Dundalk. Like Shane Duffy's goal against Denmark is kind of a false dawn as well, so you'd think Seanie Maguire has a good chance there for that one. And this is just a reminder, Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, is marking the 10-year anniversary of the official opening of the Aviva Stadium and its proud long-term sponsorship of the iconic venue. To celebrate this milestone, Aviva are paying tribute to some of the most iconic sporting moments of the past decade. Feel free to join in. You can follow Aviva Ireland on Instagram and Twitter and share your favourite Aviva Stadium memories using the hashtag #SafeToDream. We're doing football this week. We'll do rugby next week. That is the crack with that one there. So now, how's the head as a series that we've been running across OTB since lockdown kicked in this morning? We're going to hear from the Laois dual star Kerr Healy after he scored 1,000 points in hurling and kicked 1,000 football points at the weekend while running a marathon, and he's set to raise over 20 grand for Do It For Dan, the Midlands Hospital in Portlaoise and the NHS. He obviously lives in London. So here's Kerr talking with Will O'Callaghan. Have a look.
Because I didn't have a time limit, I was always going to finish it. Like if I pulled the calf and I had to walk the distance, or if it took me 15 hours, it was going to be done. So that was the thing for me. Michael had an hour to get it done. There was a bit of pressure time-wise on him. There was no pressure time-wise on me. I just had to make sure it was done.
I'd imagine the training has probably paid off because you were able to kind of refine what you were doing here. Because there was a whole lot of different approaches. You could have went with all the points early, drop the hurl in the Gaelic football and run around the field. You could have tried to do all the running first and then do the points after that. But you seem to have found a nice balance between the two in your training for this.
Yeah, I suppose made all the mistakes last weekend. Training out for did a 5-6 hour kind of session last week, and I I noticed that after I did 4 or 5 hours of hurling, to try and run around in first gear, I couldn't really run properly and they were sore. So I just tried to break the running up, maybe do a few K every hour for this, and then go back to the shooting. Did most of the hurling first as well, because my hands were cut to pieces with blisters after about 600 shots. So I'm delighted I got that out of the way early while I was still fresh as well. I have 6 blisters on my hand here. The one in my thumb I was half expecting, because that's usually where I would get a blister from hurling. But I mean, I've ones on my middle finger. I'm not even sure how. I've the outside of my hand here. Probably, I don't know, a bad technique or something, or I blame the grips. I don't know. But yeah, the hands, I've 6 of them on my left hand now. So.
Well, tell us about the technique, because you were hoping to try and put as many over as possible to stop they having to run after the ball and so on afterwards. From the bits that I was watching on the Facebook Live, you seem to get into a rhythm with those shots, particularly with the hurling early in the morning, popping them over.
Yeah, I just, stand up and strike was basically long hurl. Brian Campion from Rathdowney commented on the Facebook Live. The lad who was recording told me, he said he would have hooked me from Rathdowney. I was using such a long hurl. So yeah, just long hurl and try to get into that rhythm, clean strike every time. Now, I didn't go great at the hurling. I'd say I averaged about probably 37, 38 out of 40. I never hit a 40 out of 40 with the hurling. I was raging. Very disappointed.
The football's a little bit easier though, because you're that bit closer, and you were able to kind of just very slowly but surely use the left boot and just ping them over one after another. With the hurling, there's the element of it can go a bit more wrong.
Yeah, well, the wind, there was a wind, little wind kind of picked up. Maybe 10 or 11 o'clock, so you kind of had to take that into a little bit of account, and I didn't take it into great. You'd be taking it into account for 10, 15 shots, and then you kind of half forget about it, and you'd just throw the hurl at it and it'd tail off in the wind. Whereas with the football, the reason I went right and left was the way the wind was blowing. It just suited easy to curl it with the right foot one side and just curl it with the left the other. The wind was a help with the football.
Did you get any strange looks from any Londoners who were in the park over the last couple of weekends when you were running around with a hurl popping shots over?
I did plenty of them. I often get them. You get a few, but funny enough, 2 Irish women were walking past at one stage, and they started chatting and asking, and I said, look, I'm raising money here for Midlands Hospital and the NHS, and they took out the phones and donated straight away. They were very generous. Couldn't believe it.
Fair play. The donations are at a good point at the moment. As we speak early this morning, it's gone over the 16,000 mark. It's heading towards the 20,000. A lot of people have been very generous, particularly in the last 24 hours, obviously inspired probably by watching the challenge and seeing the finishing pictures and so on. You must be delighted with that kind of level of support you've received.
Yeah, it's really humbling, Will. It's beyond anything I expected. I was saying, there's a 20,000 target there, but that was just an arbitrary figure. It was it was 2,000 points trying to get 2,000 donations. So if that averaged out a tenner a donation, that would be 20 grand. That's just how I got on that figure. The 16.5 that's there now, it's beyond what I was expecting. It's unbelievable. And I kind of thought a lot of people would have donor fatigue at this stage, because there's been so many things going on. And I've no doubt that everyone who's donated and been sharing have been doing it for other people and giving to other worthy causes as well. So I'm kind of blown away by the generosity that's out there now. It's unreal.
For people who mightn't know, Kerr, you're how long now into knee recovery at this stage after your latest injury?
Yeah, after the latest one. It was 13th of March, so I guess that's two months really. Maybe that's 8, 9, 10 weeks. I'm not sure. I'd have to count up the weeks, but 13th of March I had the latest surgery, yeah.
13th of March, latest surgery, back doing that. It's been a phenomenal achievement, and over 16.5 grand raised. If you just Google Cara Healy, do it for Dan, you'll find the GoFundMe there as well. It's 3 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM. We're getting stuck into the final episode of The Last Dance with Kieran Donaghy, Jarlath Regan, Ronan and Eoin. We're going to play a full hour here. The full podcast includes a bonus 40 minutes that you'll be able to find on our podcast network or on youtube.com/off the ball. We're back with The Last Dance and Off the Ball after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB
Sports Radio.
Here at OTB, we're not just about sport. Our man Richie McCormick knows his tunes. Every day at midday, Richie will be bringing us his isolation mix. It's an hour of music to help you switch off from the workday, even if you're working from home. Stick on the mix, get some fresh air, and take a walk while remembering to keep your 2-metre social distance, of course. That's Richie's Isolation Mix every day at midday on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the Go Loud app or at offtheball.com/radio.
OTB AM.
With Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, celebrating 10 years of iconic sporting moments at the Aviva Stadium.
Kind of feeling a little bit emotional. This is the last, or the penultimate at least, Off the Ball. It is the very last edition of The Last Dance. Episodes 9 and 10 launched over the last 48 hours. As ever, Ronan Mullen is here, Kieran Donaghy is here, and Jarlath Regan is here. Of course, the first episode of An Irishman Abroad, Inside Basketball, is also here. Make sure to get onto that after you listen to this episode of Off the Ball. Pat Burke is Jarlath's first guest. But yeah, I think let's just start on this note that we've kind of all agreed on, that it immediately feels like we're missing something from our lives, that every Monday afternoon we'd hop on here, have a chat that went on for way too long, watch a documentary that actually now seems way too short, and there is a sense of emptiness, and the whole lockdown doesn't help any emotion you're feeling at the moment. But I think it's genuine, real nostalgia, melancholy, and a little bit of something missing now.
Yeah, there was definitely something missing from our lives going forward. You know, it was just something. So it was something we'd anticipated for so long, and we didn't think we were going to get it till after the NBA finals in June. And then all of a sudden we hear we're getting it in /April, May, and everybody's excitement was ramped up, along with obviously the restrictions that are in place now, and people can't go anywhere. There's very little live sport, no live sport to look forward to up until last weekend, and yeah, I think this was just what you wanted, and something to get you through the last 6 or 7 weeks, and to give us a further insight for us that love the game and would have known a lot about these stories, but still you were learning little bits of new stuff that you didn't know all the way on. But I think this has been remarkable for people who maybe didn't have a clue about Michael Jordan really, or maybe a small idea of Michael Jordan, maybe remember him from the time of the Olympics, but wouldn't have taken much notice of the NBA. I think for those people that have watched it, and talking to a lot of them that I meet, they get a real sense of appreciation, and I think almost getting more than what we are getting out of it. We're getting the nostalgia and the look back, but we already knew he was the GOAT. Whereas I think a lot of these people are kind of looking at it kind of going, yeah, this is amazing, this is brilliant, and it was just fantastic from start to finish. But as I said, I think the people that wouldn't be such basketball heads, I think, have a serious kind of insight into the guy Michael Jordan and that team and what he meant to the city of Chicago.
Yeah, it's been unbelievably universal, the way this has been watched over the last few weeks. A good ending, Jarlath?
Yeah, I think a really fitting ending in some ways, that essentially the story is of a thing that was beautiful and great and universally loved, that ended too soon in an unsatisfactory manner. And that, for me, is exactly what happened with this documentary. Number 10, massive letdown. Do I hold it against them? After everything they gave us, after everything Mike gave us? No. But goodness me, it made me wonder if when this all ends, when we actually are back at our desks, would it be possible to convince Jason Hare to make number 10 again without all the stress of, as Kieran said, getting it together real quick so that we can have it while we're in lockdown? Because, lads, if you correct your child's homework, you can always tell the answers that they did at the end. The standard goes down, and I just felt this number 10 just didn't have the same care and attention and density of detail. Goodness me, if you go back to 1 and look at exactly how many just clips, just actual raw clips were included, it doesn't match up.
So that's it. It's to do with raw footage and an absence of that in episode 10 that lets you down.
Among other things. I'm happy to get into them over the course of the chat. But I guess people are tuning into this having watched it. And we all know, like if you're tuning in to this podcast, you've followed the journey. You've built a relationship with Jerry Krause, Jerry Reinsdorf, Scott Burrell, and many, many others. And I really didn't like. Do you remember the end of Top Gun when they play "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" and they cut to everybody's face and give you just that moment with them before you wave goodbye to the thing that you loved for the last little while? We deserved that in relation to Scott Burrell, Randy Brown, Judd Bushler, Luke Longley. Like, come on, he's such a huge gap in this. You obviously can't cover everyone, but you have covered some people. And to not even mention the fact that Jerry Krause died, which I am abundantly aware of, and David Stern passed away. I was just like, really? That's the ending? I was like, what? I was kind of looking around going, you just wrote the lines across the screen of who got traded and who got released. I was like, maybe I'm alone in this, guys, but I was a bit like, come on, you can do better than that. We know you can do better than that. We just watched 9 episodes better than this.
What do you reckon, Ronan?
Yeah, I agree that the postscript left a lot to be desired. It's a bit like that Oasis documentary, Supersonic, where they kind of sign off before they get into where Oasis fell down. And they did the same thing here. Just as you think they're about to delve into what happened next, they just kind of close the curtains on it. But it's interesting, and it's no coincidence that episode 10 felt a little bit rushed, because it was like they had to conclude it. Jalen and Jacoby have been doing a piece with Hair after each week, basically, and he's basically said that the last 2 episodes have been in production for the last few weeks. They've been concluding them via Zoom, kind of putting the finishing touches on it. And while I'm sure they had the broad strokes of that closing scene with Jackson and putting all the notes in the fire and all this kind of stuff, in terms of piecing it together, as Jarlath said, with specific bits of footage, I'm sure they would have loved to have been around a whiteboard and kind of conducted that a little bit more seamlessly. So if it does fall down a little bit, that's probably why, in terms of the fluency. But as a piece of work, just to cast your mind back to that first week when you hear Eric B and Raheem with that opening montage as Jordan as a rookie, having not seen sport in so long, and the nourishment of that for me. Then fast forward to now, that was one of my favourite moments, just from what a piece of television. But
yeah, I'm spoiled rotten. That's the truth.
Yeah, but then
spoiled me now.
Through to Steve Kerr in this week, to bookend either side with a very different piece, but also one of my highlights. If there's a best supporting character award, Owen, I think Steve Kerr is probably going to bag that, because that was one of the most incredible 10 minutes of television. A story about his father, which I think it was when the Warriors won their first title and he was walking around Arkle Arena with TNT, and he kind of covered all the brushstrokes of it there. But the way they put it together here, it's just brilliant stuff. It kind of captured in a story that probably could have been told over the course of an hour, was told so well in, I'd say, about 10 minutes of real time. And, Jason Hare deserves a lot of credit for that, because we could probably nitpick and say they spent too long on Rodman or they spent too long on Pippen, given some of the stuff that they had to skim over. I thought they covered the Kerr thing really well.
Episode 10 was my favourite of the season, and I'm not sure if that's actually just because I've kind of forgotten, as you say, Eric B and Raheem, and that feels like such a distant memory. It's certainly been my favourite of the last 3 weeks. I hear what you're saying, but I think that the abrupt ending is perfect. I think that the story of how this all didn't go on till 1999 was the whole point of this. Supersonic ends at Nebworth because the whole point was showing us why they were important and why that gig at Nebworth was important. This was the story of The Last Dance, and why The Last Dance was a significant thing, and why it was hugely significant that this whole thing fell apart. We've been teased every single week as to what actually the main talking heads would say come the end. Now, granted, it could have been double the length, the amount of content I felt on the actual dissolution of this team, but it's still what we've all been waiting for. And it was still a moment where Michael Jordan felt a little bit unsure, or at least was put on the back foot a little bit, when that iPad was put to him of Jerry Reinsdorf explaining his decision or explaining his offer to Phil Jackson, indeed, to move things on. It just felt that Michael Jordan was on the front foot for the entire thing. And then just for a moment here, it felt like, right, okay, there he is considering perhaps another point of view on this whole thing that was The Last Dance. I also love Dennis Rodman's behind the scenes exit from the training facility and trying to get away from the press. I think just letting the archive footage run has been a real strength. They did it brilliantly with Kobe at the start of, what was it, episode 5. They did it brilliantly with Rodman here. I really enjoyed episode 10. Like, I do think, though, that the sequence with Steve Kerr in episode 9 is stunning, and it's very hard not to love Steve Kerr. And we will get back to that in just a moment. But, lads, I just want to know if your opinions have changed on the breakup of the Bulls after watching those, 10-15 minutes on Reinsdorf, on Michael Jordan, and Pippen had a bit to say, and Phil Jackson had a bit to say in episode 10. Did you learn anything new? Has your opinion changed?
It's funny, if this was like Agatha Christie, a whodunit, if you watch episode 1, you're thinking, oh, Jerry Krause is getting all the blame for this. And yet, great storytelling, the way it's framed, and Scottie Pippen saying, I think he says Krause is the greatest GM ever. Whether he means it, I'm not sure. But to say that, kind of gets the point across. And they kind of squarely put it at Reinsdorf's door, where as he hands the iPad to him, he says, Jerry, and Jordan looks at him as if to say, Jerry Krause or Jerry Reinsdorf? And like, Hare's basically saying Reinsdorf has a lot to answer for here. And he does, because ultimately, although he went to Jackson belatedly and offered him that extra year, I think by then Phil Jackson had his mind made up. The 82-0 comment wasn't going to go away, this whole thing that doesn't matter what you do this year, you're gone. And that was Krause. But Krause was really, Reinsdorf was the puppet master here. He had the final say. And we'll probably get into it, like what 99 might have looked like. Was it even achievable to keep that team together? In practical terms, it probably wasn't. Would they have even won in 99? Probably not. Like, even again, in practical terms, it was a curtailed season because of the lockout. And it was, like you saw with this Bulls team in 98, they started slowly. Granted, that was because Pippen was injured, but it was very much a marathon rather than a sprint. And 99 would have been a sprint. I'm just not sure with the creaking bodies and whatnot. I just think they would have struggled. And even on Pippen, whose body was breaking down most noticeably there, he needed to get paid. Like, he was not going to hang around. I'm sorry for all you romantics out there. There's just no chance Scottie Pippen was staying unless they gave him like $60-70 million. And
they'd have found a way of doing that, though. This is the most lucrative cash cow in sports.
But Reinsdorf,
they have found 70 million from somewhere. The really astonishing part was the fact that Michael Jordan and Jerry Reinsdorf had never had a conversation. That was the bit that I was like, what? There was 2 moments, there's a bunch of moments that really blew my mind out my ears. One is Larry Bird getting on by Michael Jordan as he leaves the building, like basically going, "Here, practice your Galpia Balix." Like, it was properly, couldn't even win with grace in that moment. That blew my mind. But when he says to him, "This is Jerry Reinsdorf, just going to talk about it," oh, sure, I never had a conversation with him about this. Like, how the does that happen? How do you allow Babe Ruth to walk away without even having a chat? Like, if Michael was that gung-ho for 7, should he fucking take the money out of his own pocket to make it happen? If he's that mad for it happening. But you're right, Ronan. It was never going to happen. Phil is so wise, he knew that.
And even Rodman, Jarlath, because Rodman, like, he was almost out of the team as it was. He was all but gone, like, as a part of the team ethic. And you saw, I think he started 23 games after that 1998 season. Like, his body just fell apart. You burn the candle at both ends. He had this freak athleticism like an Allen Iverson or a Roy Jones Jr. in boxing, but once it goes, it's gone. And Dennis Rodman
was... That's like you two lads in radio. I can tell from the cutty burning the candle at both ends. Eventually, lads, you're just going to flame out. Yeah. Me and Kieran are basically here to intervene and tell you to slow it down.
Kieran, how did this change your view on how things ended up?
Look, it's as hard to take as ever. I'll be quite honest with you, and I don't know who's to blame. I think Jerry Krause, it falls at his door with that whole comment of that 82. He can go 82-0. He's gone next year. I think you're right in a way. I think Phil knew that the writing was on the wall for the team, but I also think he had the ability to, if that comment was never made and it was left open-ended and it came to that end of that season and they did pull off the miraculous win that they did with Scotty injured, barely able to walk in that last game. And if that went to game 7, they probably would have been in trouble. But, it's those words that this will be Phil's last year. Like, I just think that's where I think Phil psychologically started to move on. He could have maybe neglected some of the kind of follow-through duties that a coach would have to make sure all these guys were going to be ready again for next year. Maybe he totally focused this was the last dance. He could have already talked to his next move, what his next move was going to be, which we know ended up being. But I disagree with Ronan. I think if they could have got them all back together, I really think they could have won the fourth one. You know, I think Jordan with a rest could have won at Pippen if they got him back and got his back healthy. I think they could have won. And yeah, I'm probably being the romantic in it, but to be quite honest, when I look at that Spurs team that won it that year against the Knicks, you know, I don't see the Knicks beating the Bulls team. And that Spurs team is early doors. Like, you know, it's really early. They no man who know Tony Parker at that stage. You know, they have a good few vets, and they've obviously Tim Duncan at you know, his young, mobile powerhouse self, one of probably the best power forward to ever play the game. And the Bulls probably would have struggled with him technically. But what
about the Bulls in '99, Kieran? If they managed to retain all the parts, are they as strong? Are they a depreciating asset?
I definitely, whatever the Rodman one would have been, the Rodman one would have been the one where Phil, having been told at the start of the year that this is last year, if he wasn't told that, I would have think he would have tried to kind of maybe have a bit more scope and control over Rodman, because Rodman respected him at the end of the day. Probably got away with it because he knew at the same time that Phil would let him away with it, which was probably a bit of an issue. But that's the way Phil was. He wasn't going to be the guy that was going to be fining and you know, or probably did fine him, but he wasn't going to be the guy who was going to cut him or get rid of him or move him on or whatever. He knew his prowess. But I think the Bulls in '99 with everybody back to give it one more go. Like they won game 6 in Utah with their second best player gone from the first minute, a power forward who never scores, and a bunch of role players and Michael Jordan, and they beat a really good Jazz team. So, you know, like there's a lot of people have bet against Michael Jordan in this last dance. A lot of them with if we'd have Gary Payton, if we'd have done this, Charles Barkley, if we'd have done that, you know, Isaiah, if we'd have done this, Drexler, if we'd have done that. There's a lot of guys that have kind of excuses of why they didn't beat Jordan. The fact is he got 6 out of 6, and who's to say that getting in against that Spurs team in '97, where it probably really is now the last dance, I think they would have taken that Spurs team if even below their powers. But you know, if they have fit Scottie Pippen, why not? You know, why not? And who's to say that they could have made a move for another forward if Rodman wasn't the guy? They could have got somebody else. Maybe Kukoc steps his game up even further. You know, I think they had the parts.
How important for you, Jarlath, was it to potentially see a bit more about what happens next? I know you were saying that the ending was abrupt, perhaps seeing a bit about the lockout in '99, about how it wasn't necessarily the open goal the following season, for example.
Yeah, I don't think I needed to see much about next, but I did need a better explanation of the ending. Okay. There's no mention of the lockout. I mean, that was the real spanner in the works of getting this team back together. Literally no mention of it. It really was a huge veil that allowed this to take place. So this question of whether this next season would take place, for the listeners that don't know, but after that NBA Finals, there's a huge long negotiation with the Players Union over essentially how much they get paid. And they get locked out by the league, and the following season takes place over 50 games rather than 82. And in that kind of blackout period, bearing in mind no social media, no pressure from the fans don't actually know what's going on. And it kind of slipped away. And that needed to be referred to. That's all I mean about, you know, the ending not being, you know, enough.
I'd say it was because of the relationships were so fractured, though. I'd say I just don't know. Like, I don't like if Phil Jackson. I really think that looking at it last night, the one thing I took away is he thought that maybe this current team was gone. Maybe he thought maybe he knew deep down Pippen would never come back. Maybe he knew deep down that Rodman was gone. But if Reinsdorf offered him the job, I can't see why Phil wouldn't take it to shove it up Jerry Krause's arse. In other words, to kind of say, you know, here you go. Yeah, you said it was my last thing. I went and won it again. And the big boss has called me. He wants me back. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I can see him possibly saying that. But as Jarlath rightly said earlier on, maybe he felt that the writing was on the wall for this team, and that he couldn't work getting this team back together. I think the lockout.
He was also old, man. He was getting old. You know, we underestimate. We talk about Mike getting burned out. I mean, you're trying to keep all these egos in check, and however zen you might be, he seemed pretty exhausted. And you know, when they talk about it in the books on this subject, they talk about him riding off into the sunset. And you know, when he eventually takes another coaching job, they do kind of stir him from a hibernation in Montana. He has no plans to do a thing. Just rest, because I'd imagine masterminding this and trying to control it. Like Ronan Lazenby puts it really well about, you know, the wheels start to rattle on this thing. Like Rodman disappearing, Scotty's back giving out. Even in that huddle, that tiny little window into that huddle of Jordan saying, "I'm not switching, I'm not doing." I mean, like, okay, we've never seen that. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him openly contradict his coach like that. Maybe we haven't been allowed to see that. But you know, it felt like the miracle of that game 6, and I really think they did that justice, in the sense that they got to slow down time and pick apart how those final points of his career were scored, and in the miraculous way in which it took place, where he's on the bench and he's literally not expending any energy. He realizes, okay, like, and you can imagine the calculations, and they talk about the calculations that he's making on the floor. I loved all of that. I just loved that he is calculating in his mind, if we don't do it now, it's not going to happen. These guys are surging. They'll take confidence from this. Scotty will not play the next game. He doesn't have another game in him. He can barely lift the trophy at the end. To be on the bench making the calculation that I can't even move here, I have no energy left, stay still and go out and blast it for the last minute and a half. Steal the ball from Karl Malone. People underestimate the steal from Karl is huge, right? And Kieran, you talked about that, the sneaking around underside, knowing that the arm game that Rodman had going with him would preoccupy him to the point of forgetting that Mike's still there. But the initial layup, the initial 2, get a quick 2, see where we go from there. That's stunning, because think about it. Utah, best defensive record in the league that year, he got a layup. He was able to get a layup in that.
It wasn't a wide open layup. It wasn't a wide open layup either, Jarlath. Like, there was bodies everywhere. He had to throw it high off the glass, off balance, falling away. That's the one. Really, that 42 seconds is poetry in motion, though. The whole, like, I love that part in the doc where I knew, you know, in my head I was going to say, you know, would they somehow figure out the way to actually finish it at that, because it is the finish of it in so many ways. Yeah, there's all the stuff that happened afterwards in the team, but that's the end. That last 42 seconds, the steal, you know. And even I love the way that Jordan said he had a sneaky look at his eye to Phil Jackson. You know, I always thought in my head Jordan got that ball and never looked at anybody and said, well, I'm going to win this, but he had a sneaky look. And I don't know whether Rodman did it on purpose, but again, these are things I picked up, and I've seen this play. I've seen these plays hundreds of times. And Rodman's kind of, you know, Scotty's coming down. Scotty X is one way, and he's like, I'm just getting out of the way. He's just trying to literally run out of the way. But Rodman then later on comes down the right-hand side of the court and cuts straight across and brings Antoine Kerr with him, I think. But what it does is it gives Jordan a double gap, as our coach Pat Price of the Warriors would have called it, like, where there's nobody to help right. There's nobody can jump off a guard. The next helper was way over in the kind of wing/corner where Scotty had run to. And Jordan knew he had Byron Russell beat and beat bad. But you know, Jarlath spoke about his tiredness. He was wrecked. And I loved that bit as well, where he missed a lot of shots short in that fourth quarter. And then he comes back and he says, yeah, I just had to, you know, I had to make sure I extended it all the way. I had to get it right off my fingers. I had to rightly follow through. And yeah, you're kind of going, like, this is going through this guy's head as he's put somebody on the floor with a crossover. He's rising up and he's telling himself in the biggest pressure moment of all, and I guarantee he was probably in slow motion from at that stage, but like, follow through and the perfect shot, nothing but net. I'm trying to teach Lola Rose that swishes are better than just baskets, but like, that was the ultimate swish and the ultimate way to sign off. But like, you're talking about the following year, he averaged 34 points in that series. You know, he averaged 34 points. He'd 45 when it mattered most. You know, who on that Spurs team the following year is gonna guard him? Sean Elliott.
Yeah,
maybe.
But you know, Kieran, as you know, with any championship team, the planets need to align, and it felt like they had aligned for the final time. And you know, the finality of it, like you say, how close they came to losing to the Pacers was well covered. And it's funny now too, because I remember the push off that Reggie did on Mike at the time. And I remember being as upset about that as any, all due respect to GAA, Kieran, there have been some bad decisions in GAA. And as a Kildare man, I know all about them. And I was as angry about any decision in any sports field in my life as that push off Reggie did on Mike to get open to hit that three. Fair play to him for hitting the three. But he called it a little shove. He went through him, threw both elbows into his chest and just kept running. To see the balance, though, of, you know, I thought, oh, well, Mike did, the more I thought about it, well, Mike did push off Russell. And then they break that down. And actually, this is the first time in my life that I've watched it on a big screen, high definition. And I realize now he never pushed off at all.
Vastly different incidents.
There's literally no extension of the arm. There's no shove at all. Like they said, showing a waiter showing you to your table was definitely the best piece of language to describe that.
The best trash talk line of all time was Jordan saying, "Don't ever talk to Black Jesus again."
Yeah. Can I just say
you're calling yourself Black Jesus, you know you're pretty good, I think.
That moment with Phil Jackson is just worth going back on for just a moment, because I hadn't seen that before, and it's just a really small thing. It's great coaching by doing no coaching, by just shutting up, not calling the timeout, complete trust in your players. And to be honest with you, part of me during the last 10 episodes has thought to myself, I just want to see more Phil Jackson. The one episode we got where it showed his background and it showed his real interest in Native America and how he managed to apply that to Dennis Rodman. Found that fascinating, and I wanted more. But actually, it's probably the absence of Phil Jackson that tells us a lot about Phil Jackson. That Jerry Krause is pretty quick to put himself front and centre and say, this is all about the organisation. I guarantee you Phil Jackson is the first man to say this is all about the players. And it is all about Michael Jordan, probably more than any of the other players. And just that moment, just shutting up, standing there, trusting in number 23, that's Phil Jackson right there, isn't it? It's not the triangle offence. It is the trust in his players.
That was a thing of his. And this comes up in the various different books that he's written and that have been written about him, of teams in crisis on the court, and how throughout the season he would deliberately go, this is on you guys. Do you want me to bail you out? This is on you to figure this out. You have a problem. Together, you're going to work it out. And yeah, that is the genius, some of the genius of the man. But God, his name has really been shaken by the time in New York. All the championships are one thing, but, you know, Phil Jackson is an example of somebody that probably could have walked away a little bit earlier and maintained the godlike reputation of Wooden, these kind of guys. But he lost some of that luster with some of the stuff and comments and falling asleep at practice and stuff like that. But this was him at his best. You're right. That it was like, I did remember, Kieran. I remember not only Rodman cutting across the lane in that final play, but I also remember Jordan making the steal and Rodman attempting to call the timeout and then realizing, no, Mike's gone. This is game on.
I love the piece of footage from game one. You see that piece, the bit of footage from game one where they're down one, and like Phil is like, you know, we're really in the fucking shit right now. You know, it was it was just, you know, I was kind of like, you guys have put us in the shit right now, and it's time you kind
get serious.
Yeah, get serious. And I was kind of like going, okay, Phil, you know, that obviously a guy that with his background and his pedigree, he's got 13 championships as a player and a coach, you know, so he's allowed fall asleep at a Knicks practice. I can tell you that much, especially when he was there. But you know, that all sides of him, and I really like the you know, I loved episode 10 as well. I'm with you, Owen. I loved that. You know, I thought that scene was really powerful, and what a way to sign it off. And I was only hoping they'd go into those little, you know, there's nothing more powerful than teams kind of sharing stuff about each other and how they feel and all that kind of stuff. It really does build a camaraderie, but that would have left a nice, they couldn't have left it any other way when they knew that the writing was on the wall that this was going to be broke up.
Well, can I just ask you all then, just in terms of the legacy of Michael Jordan? I'm with you in the fact that I think that ending it on an abrupt note was fine. It's probably due to the fact that they didn't have a whole lot of time to actually plan the ending. Maybe it was ideal, but this is the way it was, and I'm fine with it. If you had an alternate ending, what is the one piece of legacy that you were threading through as a director here? Like, what is the thing? Like, for me, it has to be something a little bit more about how Michael Jordan influenced the next generation of basketballer. I don't think we get that. We get any sense of that throughout the entire documentary series. That's fine, because it's based on the 90s and the 90s alone. I think we get an instant hit of how important he was at the time. But in terms of what comes next in the league as a whole, I don't think we get any real sense of that. And it's a bit of a shame, because there's always so many conversations about Michael Jordan as the GOAT and whether or not LeBron James will ever be able to be in the same conversation. Whereas I would be of the opinion that Michael Jordan was amazing so that people like LeBron James could take the game to a whole new level. Like, if Michael Jordan was born 20 years later, he'd be a different basketballer, for example. But basketball became an even greater sport after Michael Jordan, because of what he did in the game. And that for me is just a little bit missing from the legacy part of things.
Well, like we've spoken about how it's been portrayed as a profile piece in certain quarters, where because Michael Jordan signed off on it, that he wanted to put out this image of himself. But there was light and shade in it, no more so than the Republicans wear sneakers too thing, which they kind of fleshed out more than I thought they would. And I remember speaking to Harry Edwards around the Mexico City protest, doing a piece on that. And like, he was talking about Michael Jordan in that context. So Michael Jordan would have been, I think, 5 years old when that happened. So he wasn't of the civil rights generation. He was the post-civil rights generation. And to your point, Owen, those lads opened doors for black athletes that were coming after him. And he kicked those doors down and sort of paved the way for the likes of Kobe Bryant first. And then LeBron James has taken it to another level almost from what Kobe did. So I think, as you said,
it goes without saying, lads. I don't think it needed to be said. I mean, I think that, like, if they had included 5 minutes of, and now look at how Michael Jordan influenced the game. I mean, as a baller, as a hoops fanatic, I mean, that's like saying, like, look at how Ali affected fighting. I mean, but we're doing this documentary because of his impact. His impact is felt from the shape of the shorts that people wear, to young lads sticking out their tongues, to David Beckham wearing 23 for the Galaxy. You know, I didn't feel that was missing at all. If anything, I felt that if we're looking at the list of grudges that he holds, and we throughout the series got everyone from Christ down to the Isaiah Thomas feud. LeBron James is on that list, because, you know, this, whether he wants to ever admit that or not, this in effect, this whole series and the green light for it was him going, "You made it personal. Don't forget who the greatest is." And that, to me, is this 10-part series is the perfect tribute to the man, and in essence, he deserves that. So, if you want a hard-hitting documentary on Michael Jordan, go somewhere else. We needed a tribute to the man and what he did, and that's what this is.
An alternate ending for you, Kieran. What would you have changed?
I don't know what I've changed much. I like Jarlath said, his effect was, he brought the game like to the next level, and that's known in basketball. Magic and Larry brought it to a certain level, and then Jordan blew the top off it. Probably why there was a strike and fellas were looking for more money in '98 was on the back of what Michael Jordan had done for the NBA and all the players. I think it was Willow Bay, one of the talking heads, the female broadcaster. She was saying that, like, you know, this guy was mega worldwide before, you know, we didn't even have the cable television that they would have got anything from America over here. There's no social media. You got posters, you got Sports Illustrated, you got Slam, you got old VCR tapes, you got Come Fly With Me, you got Airness, you got Playground, and then when Jordan retired, there was an ultimate box set that came out with like 6 DVDs, and it's the one I have at home with all the 3 videos and special games and highlights and all that. That was his effect, and that was his legacy. But like Jarlath, I don't think they had time to go into it. But his effect is he had a 12-year-old from Carsley and Tralee out the back for 3 or 4 hours a night shooting the basketball. That's worldwide. And if you look at the NBA today and what it is and what David Stern has managed to do on the back of Michael Jordan and knowing how to exploit Michael Jordan's fame, they brought the game to a global audience now, and it's you've people from all over the world playing in the NBA. Every continent is represented. It's a worldwide game thanks to Michael Jordan. There's Michael Jordan, there's Muhammad Ali, there's Tiger Woods. They're the three that are on a level of their own. And I'd have Kobe ahead of LeBron in my ranking. And I think Jordan's heart and like we see all the moves, we see the flashy moves, we see the style, we see the willingness, the doggedness to win, and we see the figment of imagination that he used to get a one-up on somebody so he could make sure he could go perform. I think what's missed, I think what they never got into is that he played 304 out of 304 games in the last 3 years. Like it's off the wall stuff. How a guy coming back after baseball after a year and a half playing basketball can go play 304 out of 304 games. Never once took a night off. Never once. And his reason for not taking the night off is because, there could have been an Eoin Sheahan from Killarney on his holidays in Chicago, and he wanted to go see the Bulls. And if Michael Jordan was on a rest day, that was his one chance ever, never going to get to see him. So he wanted to play every game, and I think that's totally underestimated in how amazing it was, this three-peat that he played a part in every game.
Just on your point, Jarlath, about a lot of things not needing to be said, you're right. There's a lot of things that we don't need to be informed of. At the same time, how cool would it have been for Jordan to be asked about his legacy, or to be asked about what happens next, or to actually hear what he has to say about it? I know he's been asked about it in the past, but I think that 70-80%, and that's probably being generous to the documentary makers, of this entire content has been stuff that we've all known about anyway, and a lot of stuff didn't really need to be said. The whole point is this is the Michael Jordan documentary, and getting him to, I don't know, interact with things on an iPad, or getting him to actually give his definitive trash talk line on people. That's what we want to see. This is all.
I disagree. I disagree. Like I disagree with any questions about legacy, history, and kind of overarching stuff, in the same way as comedians getting asked, where do you get your jokes from? What are women funny? These kind of, I don't give a damn about that. And also, I don't, like, that's not for him to say. This idea of legacy and where you fit in and your influence, he's the worst person to ask about that, because he's just living his life. What I'm more interested in, and what I came to this for, was specific detail. The behind the scenes footage, just not used enough for me. I know he drew a line through a lot of stuff, but sometimes Jason Hare's questioning kind of bugged me as well. The pizza story, the flu game, we have a chance to really pull at the threads of this. 5 guys arrive at 10:30 at night, the only pizzeria open in Utah. Mike wants a pizza. First of all, what's Michael Jordan doing eating pizza the night before a game? I mean, even I knew that in secondary school.
Hold on a minute.
A big lump of bread. A big lump of bread at 10:30 at night when you've got a game the next day.
Rodman was drinking tequila. Rodman was drinking tequila.
Yeah, different animal. His system was used to it. I just thought. Also, Tim Grover, I have a bad feeling about this. Well, don't make him eat the feckin' pizza then, Tim. You're meant to be if you have a bad feel, like, to me, that's like, I hate Irish people that go, I knew that was going to happen. And you're like, yeah, well, you didn't say anything at the time, so that's feck all use to anybody now. But that's basically what Tim Grover did. I wanted them to pull at those details more.
What do you suspect?
Know what was on the pizza.
Okay.
How did they poison this pizza? Like what? Like, and Michael Jordan is Mr. Grudge. Is pizza now on the list?
I would say it certainly is.
Yeah.
I just have
to find that pizzeria, buy it, and run it into the ground. Put all the guys out of work. I mean, it just seemed like there was a few times in this. Like, I get what you're saying. Historically, where does all of this fit in? And there's books on that. And they had academics in here. There's a brilliant documentary if people are looking for further reading called Unbound. And it literally is about that impact. It is about the cultural impact of the man on the culture, on music, fashion, art, and sport. People should go and watch that next. But for me, this was behind the scenes. I mean, behind the scenes should be, I want to watch Mike Lace's shoes. I'm sorry, maybe I'm that nerd, but I feel like I'm not alone on this, that we watched this down the lens of Channel 4 giving us a highlights show on a Saturday morning that you recorded and watched back until it was unwatchable. We're now getting the chance to get the fine detail. And at times I felt like the fine detail was just a little bit short, even in the questioning of Scottie Pippen saying, if I could go back, I'd do it all again. Ask more. Come on, let's get a bit more detail here. We have the time and space.
On the pizza thing, my image is of the 5 people being 5 children in a big trench coat, holding up the pizza, trying to disguise themselves from actually trying to ruin Michael Jordan at the time. I just don't see how 5 people...
Muppets.
Like, it's the least... it's the most conspicuous thing you can possibly do. You travel in a group to actually try and find someone.
Five Guys burgers, good. Five Guys pizza, bad.
Not so good.
Run.
I was about to say the burgers before the National League final last year did us no harm.
What were on the burgers? You obviously is this
there were 5 guys. 5
Oh,
guys,
sorry, there were
5
actual
guys.
5 guys. Ah, right.
Yeah, there were actually 5 guys. Yeah.
Before the National Cup final or National League final.
Before the National League final last year. Yeah.
Right. Jesus, okay.
Well, we did before the cup game. We went and had pasta and chicken and all the right stuff, and we were absolutely shocking. So, I think fellas didn't want the kind of the sit down regular meal. So, someone suggested, "Come on, we go to 5 Guys for a burger. We're trying to kill some time." So, yeah, we did. We headed out, and it didn't affect us the next day. So the pizza, Jordan wasn't the only night Jordan had pizza before a game. Don't worry. Game is the following night. Like, it's not going to have too much effect. And there's dietitians probably pulling their hair out now as I'm speaking.
Yeah.
But anyway.
There's definitely a lot of stuff though that you did look back. Like, there's a lot of stuff in it that really added to the nostalgia of this. I'm sure for pros watching it, even just this, that would never be allowed now. The team would probably travel with a chef. And the regulation and the tightness of the social.
That's what I was thinking. Why didn't the hotel? How could they not? What they're probably staying? I presume they're staying in a 5-star hotel. Like, please tell me someone couldn't whip them up a pizza downstairs.
Yeah. That story's always intrigued me for years and years. So I think there's an awful lot. Like, we could easily talk on and on on those details. Owen,
It's 2-2 in that series, this flu game. So, if he doesn't miraculously score 38 points in 44 minutes and absolutely carry them with no fluid or no fluid in his body, no food in his body, if he was able to go to that, I think it was David Aldridge said that he was like the Terminator. He came out and he said, I'm going to go to another level, whether you can believe it or not, I'm going to go there. And he did. And if they lose that and they're 3-2 down, very possibly they lose the next game. The trajectory is totally different. So, like, that game can't be underestimated in how important it was in his legacy. In the end, it of course added to his legacy. But if they'd have lost that game, and they could have lost it, if they'd have lost that game, you know, it's yeah, maybe you're right, Jarlath. Maybe he's buying out all those pizza parlours at that time and closing the whole place down. But
well, Ryan Rosillo on the Bill Simmons podcast said that he has a memory of someone in Park City coming up to him and saying, deadly serious, years later, I'm the guy that poisoned the pizza that Michael Jordan ate. And you know, I knew of that. I knew that there's a guy going around going, that was me, even though he still beat you. There was a tiny glimmer of hope in me that Jason Herr had tracked down that guy. But that wasn't to be. I mean, that is asking too much now.
That really is the next 10-part series, the Pizza Guy. Let's just take a quick pit stop here to talk about Jordan's list, because in episode 9, he has officially revealed that he has a list when he's talking about Brian Russell and going up against him, and he does something and he's like, this guy's on the list. And I think we've kind of suspected this for the last 5 weeks or so, that there is an actual physical list of names that Michael Jordan has. Brian Russell, top of the list. Guys, chip on in here. Who else is on this list?
Oh, Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller for a start. Like, I thought Reggie Miller, the reason he got his little shine in Game 6 of that Eastern Conference Finals is because Jordan knew, we won that anyway. I don't mind him getting a few minutes in the sunshine here, but I thought he stepped into the Ron Harper role today. Reggie Miller was class at the start, at the end of last week, and at the start of this week. I thought he was really good. And then, as you said, Brian Russell, and in that famous Stuart Scott piece that we played a few weeks ago, Eoin, I think Michael Jordan said, is it Byron or Brian Russell? And he obviously knew well at that point who he was. So, as you said, that list had been... he put his name down there, whether it was misspelled or not, I'm not quite sure. And then the obvious one, Karl Malone winning MVP, which I'm not sure about regular season MVP at the best of times. Like, the most important part of the season is the postseason. So let's sort of encapsulate everything. And Cren 1. Cren 2 is a good compromise, but, you know, I always think there's it's a bit of an asterisk if you don't subsequently do it in the playoffs. But the fact that Jordan himself, he'd won countless at this point, and then went on to win the series MVP, that was something that drove him as well. And we spoke previously about Karl Malone, you know, a star in his own right, second to Kareem in scoring. Only LeBron is more, like, all NBA appearances, first team. So this is a good player. And even Jordan was like, he's not on my level. So those are a few new entries to the list, but there are plenty, as you said.
Jarlath, who have you got to add to the list?
So I have Juanita, the wife, the ex-wife, didn't get a mention. Can you imagine the she was putting up with, if that's what the teammates were putting up with? But the biggest settlement in sports divorce law history. So that's the people that I have down are people that he has such a grudge against, he didn't even put them in the documentary. His high school coach, I mean, the guy that cut him, who started the fire that everyone else couldn't put out. Isaiah Thomas, not the Isaiah Thomas from back then. I would say he hates the modern Isaiah Thomas just because of his fucking name. As I said, I think LeBron is on the list. Lad who made the pizza, definitely on the list. And anyone who wears Adidas or another sports brand. Now, this is a story that comes from the Sports Illustrated piece, which was quite a sad piece. You can look it up online about where he is turning 50. And there's a story within it that a new PA had been hired, and she came in one day doing, you know, the classic Aisling thing of wearing her sports shoes on the walk down the quays into work. And Mike got wind that she was wearing Pumas to work for Michael Jordan. And the next day she arrived into work. And I know a lot of people are going, and he had a nice big box of Air Jordans for her. No, he had taken a scissors and chopped up all of her runners. He himself. That's how big the grudge is against anyone who would deign to wear another sports brand in his employ. So that's my other one, is anyone not wearing his shoes.
Kieran, you've got a few more spaces to add to the list here.
No, I'd say Jarlath has it summed up there from going outside the realms of it. I think he had real people on the list, and I think I think half the list is a bit of bullshit. You know, BJ Armstrong, LeBradford Smith, all of these fellas, that was Jordan's own mind, just trying to get him up for games, get him up for certain situations. Even in the finals, he not really against Magic in '91. He liked Magic. He knew he was going to beat the Lakers. They knew they were better at that stage. Even Drexler, I think, is a bit fake. Oh, I wanted to prove to Drexler. I think he knew deep down he was way better than Drexler, and like, they're comparing me to Drexler. Well, I'll prove them wrong. No, that was again all Jordan's inner monologue that was getting going. I think the real people on the list were the Pistons, the bad boys, the guys down low, and Isaiah, obviously. The Knicks, in both his three-peats, the Knicks and Ewing would have been a big one, and Ewing doesn't get much love considering he beat him in a college final and beat him all the way through his pro career. And the only time Ewing had any luck, Jordan was gone, and he still lost the final. So I think the Suns and Barkley were on his list. Really, I think Barkley was on his list, even though he was really good friends. I think Barkley had done enough mouthing off in the Olympic build-up that Jordan couldn't wait to get his hands on him. I think Reggie and the Pacers were legit and definitely on his list, because it went over the 92, 93 footage of Reggie and Michael's fight. And I think Reggie was always on Michael's hit list, because I'd say he respected him as a really good player and a bit of a trash talker and a long defender and a perennial all-star, a dream team type of player after Jordan's team. I think he was on the list. And I think the Jazz were on the list with Malone and Stockton. And they would have felt, we could have got them both times. As I said, the flu game in '97, that series could have gone either way on that result. And I think in Game 6, when Scotty's down and Jordan's out there with a bunch of role players, and he has to go score 45 points for them to win the game, and he does it all that way. And Malone coming onto the bus. Afterwards.
Get off the fucking bus. What are you doing on the bus?
Yeah.
What's he doing in there?
Yeah, I think
what a classy guy. Get off the bus.
Yeah, the hugging with Jordan at the end really sums up maybe why.
He looked like Jordan was awkward himself.
He was like, what the f***? Loads of chances to give me a high five back there.
It sums up why Malone, in my eyes, didn't get the Jazz over the line. He just didn't have the
terrible dress sense.
Jordan had.
Terrible ethic.
Jordan wasn't going up the bus against the Pistons in 89, 90, kind of going, oh, hey lads, yeah, best look. I hope you go win another championship. Malone at that stage was knocking on the door near the end of his career, like how he's even in the headspace to be going up the bus. And you could call it nice sportsmanship, but it's rubbish in my eyes. Nice sportsmanship, you ring the guy in a week and you say, man, well done, you know, he did it again.
It's a weird move.
This going up the bus, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, to be honest. So he was definitely on the list, but that would be the real list for me. They were the five.
I think Horace is on the list as well, Kieran. Do you think Horace is on?
I think Jordan's real list is on teams that he felt maybe might beat them at a stage, and I think they're the real. I think that's the real list. I think the rest of the list is
it's hundreds of people on the list, but I know what you mean.
That's what I mean. Every team there was a guy that Jordan was like, oh, this fella now thinks he's great, I'm going to put manners on him. As I said, he played 304 of the last 304 games. You have to have something that wants you to tug out against the Bullets in a Thursday night game where you're winning by 30, like, you know. But, you know, nice insights. Him so into the game when they were winning Game 3 against the Jazz. I like that side of Jordan. Bill Winnington is the only guy not to score. Let's go, Bill. Let's get a basket. And, you know, like, that's a game that actually, I don't know how, but it's a game, maybe because it was so inevitable and maybe I went to bed early or fell asleep, or I can't understand how I missed how big of a hammering they gave him in Game 3. Like, it's off the charts how a team could do that.
Jerry Sloan, MVP of that episode for me.
Yes.
Twice he made me absolutely spit out my drink. First of all with, was he sick? I didn't know he was sick. Here, did everybody else know he was sick? I mean, how does that information not trickle through? Because if that information gets to him, they target him every time down the court. Wear him out, pull on his arms. He's probably going to get sick if you breathe in his face. I mean, the man is fragile. That was remarkable, but hilarious that he would say it so openly in the press conference. And then obviously, is this the real score? That still makes me laugh. Is this the full score?
54.
That's still funny to me.
That just shows you when Rodman and Scotty and Jordan are dialed in against two Hall of Famers, and the rest. You know, that was a nice squad. That Jazz squad. They're a really, really good team. And people, Jordan naysayers piss on the Jazz a small bit, saying, "Oh, the Jazz this he Jeff Hornacek marketing." He didn't have Jeff Hornacek marketing for too long at all. He had either Shannon Anderson or Byron Russell, 2 6'7" athletes that were draped all over him, and they couldn't handle him.
Little side fact there, lads. John Stockton went to Dungarvan in 1992, the national basketball camp, and coached Irish young lads from all over the country. And by all accounts, everyone expects John Stockton to be, you know, skinny little white guy with the tiny shorts. By all accounts, he was a break house himself,
a beast.
That's when you see him actually getting posted up by Mike and holding his own. You forget that, like, that guy was a beast, like an absolute untold beast. And the fact that he was saying, I was not overawed by the Chicago Bulls, was a beautiful classic Stockton moment that I loved.
OTB AM.
With Aviva, Ireland's largest insurer, celebrating 10 years of iconic sporting moments at the Aviva Stadium.
Off the